at this nuclear plant in Ukraine. President Biden has spoken with the Ukrainian president.
We are freaking live, guys, ladies and gentlemen. All right, welcome in here, everybody. So, guys, let me cut this crap off. Get out of here. Let me read this crap. All right, now we are, guys, we're all set. We're all ready. We are live. I apologize. I didn't warn anyone that I was going live. Just got through the door. But today's Tactical Podcast, number 76, guys. 76 podcasts already. And we got a hell of a guest lined up for you. It's really going to be something special today. So today we got Tyler Jackson coming on. Now, I know Tyler from One Shepherd. Tyler is he's a very accomplished individual. And I learned more from talking to this guy for like 10 minutes than I usually do, honestly, in like a couple month period of time. So it's going to be really cool. Oh, shit, right on, man. Sam Adams over in Corpus Christi, Texas. Welcome, bro. Welcome. So I'm going to be pulling up his resume here. Guys, wait until you hear this resume, okay? Because not only was Tyler in the Army, he's just like, all right, so check this out. Tyler Jackson, his education, all right? So he's got a master's in education and a bachelor of arts from Columbia College with an emphasis in philosophy, politics, and military science. Gosh damn. Experience. Okay, so Army University, training and education analyst, Department of the Army, Civilian Fort, Leavenworth, Kansas. All right. Valiant Integrated Services Training Analyst, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Military Analyst, Army University, Fort Leavenworth. United States Army Reserves Observer, Coach, and Trainer. United States Army Infantry, Bravo Company, 2nd of the 503rd Regiment. And he served in Italy, September 2013 through February 2018. U.S. Army Machine Gunner, Army Machine Gun Team Leader, Army Rifle Team Leader, Army Rifle and Weapon Squad Leader, Company Trainer, Development Specialist. I mean, and let me just tell you guys, this guy is the real McCoy. All right, like for real, he is the real McCoy. Every single time we go there to One Shepherd, we train. Whenever Tyler is there, whenever he can make the time to be there, again, remember, One Shepherd, it's the type of thing where you come in and if you've already graduated through the 6-semester pipeline, then you help teach other guys. And it's always just such a pleasure because he knows his stuff. All right, suffice to say that. TACCOM Media LLC. He's instructional designer. Obviously, One Shepherd, Technical Institute of Leadership Operations. A lot of stuff. Battle Staff course in the Army. Battle Staff course, Warrior Leadership Program. Yeah, guys. I mean, this just. Let me just round it off here with U.S. Army Infantry 1 Station Unit Training Course, U.S. Army Basic Airborne Course, Machine Gun Leaders Course, Warrior Leaders Course, Italian Armed Forces Parachute School, Unit Movement Officers Course, Urban Breaching and Demolition Course, Close Quarters Marksmanship Course, Winter Warfare Basic Course, in Estonia, mind you, Range Safety Officer course, and then, of course, for his awards and recognition, Light Fighters Honors Graduate, German Armed Forces Proficiency Badge, Commandant's List Honors Warrior Leaders course, Expert Infantryman's Badge testing, published in articles in Infantry Magazine. All right, guys. So this is the guy that we're having on tonight. Like I said, last time I ran into Tyler, it was the SNS Training Solutions Operation Winterforge, which was a 3-day-long winter warfare training. Glad I went through that, obviously, before all this nonsense happened in Russia and Ukraine, we didn't really think too much about winter warfare, but now having been through that course, I really understand what it must be like and how much it must suck to fight in the winter like that. So Tyler's going to be coming on in the next 10 minutes or so. But before we get into that, we're going to cover some news, guys. And this is the way that we're going to be trying to do it from now on in the Tactical Podcast. We're going to do about 10 minutes of news before we get in and bring in the main guest. So if you guys like this, let us know. If you don't like this, hey, let us know so we can adjust accordingly. Yeah, exactly, human being. A regular badass and a good old-fashioned Johnny Appleseed American badass. I feel like it's a little dark in here. I don't know what the fuck that's about. Thank you. Ale and adventure. Thank you, man. And God bless you too, man. DJ. Yeah, dude, Tyler he's coming on, man. He's a solid bro. So I don't know if any of you guys have heard this, but the Russians have now attacked a Ukrainian nuclear power plant, and there's smoke showing, which is probably not the best sign. And it's it's getting interesting day by day. It gets more and more interesting over there. So they attacked Chernobyl, and they're saying now that they got abnormal radiation readings coming out of Chernobyl. Now the damn Ruskies are attacking this other legit nuclear power plant that still operates. So where this all ends, God only knows, but I'm hoping it will end at some point. Let's go through the news stories here, guys. By the way, if you don't follow us on Instagram, we are being shadow banned right now. Instagram sent me a letter saying that, hey, you've been posting too much false information that we fact checked to tell you that it's not true in the eyes of Facebook. So they're shadow banning. They legit told me they're shadow banning me now. But with all that being said, you can still find us there. We post news all day long in our stories. So if you like the news and you'd like to follow this Ukraine situation, head over, if you have an Instagram, at Gutter Fighting Secrets, and you can find news. Literally, we push the news out all day long. And obviously for my career, for my job, my real job, not my side business, is my job, I follow the news all day. So that's what we're doing over there. We're pushing that. But let's go over here and take a look what we got. So a Russian soldier surrenders to Ukrainian forces. They gave him tea and food and all of that. So there's a massive propaganda campaign coming out of Ukraine about how well they're treating Russian soldiers. I honestly haven't heard yet that they're mistreating their prisoners of war. Now, I'm sure it happens, but I'm just saying I haven't heard documented cases yet of them mistreating their prisoners. It seems to me like they're still at the stage in warfare where both sides are pretty much trying to be civil to each other's prisoners. Because obviously, if you mistreat your prisoners, then your guys are going to get mistreated when they get captured too. So I hope it remains that way. I know during the Crimea thing in 2014, we saw some god-awful stuff come out. People being crucified alive and things like that. So I pray that doesn't happen. Now, we also got Ukrainians. They're catching people who loot and steal, and they are actually duct taping them, if you see here, to telephone poles and stuff like that, which I think is probably a great idea. So now we've got Ukrainian Irishmen, right? So people of Ukrainian descent living in Ireland, they're all going over to fight. Then you got Israeli doctors on their way to Ukraine. You've got Brits on their way to Ukraine. So, like I said, where this all ends, we don't know, right? I mean, you've got literally almost every nation, nationals from almost every nation heading over there. So you think Russia doesn't know that? I don't know. Does this turn into a world war? I don't see a way out of this one, guys. I really don't, but I've been wrong before. I hope this is one of those cases. There was of last night, our time, a large power outage that hit several parts of Taiwan. The cause was unknown at the time. I haven't heard anything more about it. I did note that Taiwan's overall broader market was somewhat down today. So whether that had something to do with it or not, something to keep an eye on. China continues with their incursions into the Taiwanese airspace. So again, something to track, something to keep an eye on. Yeah, exactly, Sam Adams. You got to embrace the suck, man. But it doesn't make it no easier. I'll tell you that. You probably know. That ship that was carrying 4,000 luxury cars, Porsches, Ferraris, things like that, it finally sank after 2 weeks of burning in the middle of the ocean. So, um, U.S. set to sanction Russia even more. U.S. also is set to sanction more Russian oligarchs. So what we're obviously trying to do is squeeze them, and hopefully one of them will maybe make a move. We'll see, but so far nobody's had the balls. It was also offered by an American Russian billionaire to pay whoever kills Putin $1 million in cash. So this Russian billionaire that obviously is not in Russia, he has offered a bounty on Putin's head, which I thought was interesting. The NRA cannot be dissolved by the New York Attorney General, says a ruling judge in that case. If any of you guys were watching that, New York City or New York State, whatever Attorney General was trying to shut down the NRA, well, they've ruled that you can't do that, bud. In a stunning reversal, Russian and Belarusian athletes have been banned from the Paralympics for their country's roles in the war in Ukraine. Russian commanders will be hunted down for war crimes if they follow Putin's orders, Justice Secretary warns. Yeah, it's what it is, guys. Oh, and in case you need a laugh, that dog just likes to get that paper. Sometimes we got to really sit back and find something that we can laugh at, right? Like sometimes in these crazy fucked up times, we literally got to find something to like take our mind off it, right? For me, I went to jujitsu last night for like an hour and a half. I didn't fucking think about Ukraine at all. And it was amazing. It wasn't until 10 minutes or so afterwards that I thought, oh, we're about to go into World War III. I forgot. But it felt nice to forget it for a little while. U.S. intelligence says Russia advance on Kyiv has made little progress. So we're hearing reports now of Russian forces actually disabling their own vehicles, punching holes in their fuel tanks and what have you to avoid fighting and surrendering. Now, I hope this trend continues. A lot of these Russian conscripts do not want to be there. They never did. They were not told they were going into combat. And the last statistic that I heard, now keep in mind, this statistic is coming out of the Ukraine, so we cannot trust it. But they're claiming to have killed over 4,000 Russian soldiers so far. Whether that's true, I don't know. DJ, I don't know if you've heard anything else, but that's just what Ukraine is alleging. Romanian MiG crashed. Rescue helo also crashed. Holy shit. Claims of inclement weather, but no further statements or official reports as of yet. It just keeps getting more and more, right? More and more. We got a good article on the Gutter Fighting Secrets Instagram page about how Western governments are actually getting their military gear into the Ukraine. It's quite an interesting read if you want to read that. Another one about Molotov cocktails, which was pretty good. Day 6 of the war in Ukraine. Fires are burning all over. Putin says that we are on track. Putin says the invasion is on track with the timeline and no need to worry. The power plant in southeast Ukraine is still being attacked right now. Russian forces blocked fire emergency services from putting out any fires and mitigating other risks at the plant. Great. Yeah, great. I just love nuclear fires. Great. Fuck. Cocksucking Russians, man. I'll tell you that. Food was great. Unfortunately, Putin spoiled our appetites. TripAdvisor disables Russian reviews. China concerned about Ukraine's nuclear safety as Russia advances. And ironically, that was put out yesterday, Chinese time. So, yeah, no shit. These fucking guys are right to be concerned. Now, obviously, China's been pretty supportive of Russia, but when does that end, right? Like, when does China even step in and say, all right, Putin, like, what the fuck are you doing? You're causing trouble for everybody. I wonder if that would happen. The West has used crushing sanctions on Russia, and the implications are huge. You guys ever watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia? It's the implication. Anyway, yeah, the implications are really big. We're backing Putin to a corner. This guy needs to go. It's plain and simple. There's no way around it. He needs to go. Watching from North Carolina, first-time Marine. Badger, you're in good company here. I was never in the Marines, but we got lots of Marines that watch, man. And thanks for serving, bro. Definitely appreciate that. You know, it's crazy to me because I was sitting back and actually DJ and I were talking the other night. And I told him, look, man, I'm trying to lay out of this conflict as fucking long as possible, man. Like I don't want to go and fight. I really don't want to go and fight. Like I'm trying to make money and like relax. I'm 35. I'm too old for this shit. But I will if it fucking like becomes necessary. But with that being said, for you guys who go and like put life and limb on the line for the country, like much respect. The West has used. Yeah, we just got to that. Another interesting article that we got on the Instagram page in our story is why a no-fly zone is also an act of war. All right, you guys may have heard that from several other countries, whether it was Syria, Iran, or whatever, but I guess that technically is an act of war. Russian intelligence agency, the Federal Security Service, has drafted plans for public executions in Ukraine after cities are occupied and captured, per a European intelligence official. You think the squawk about having gas go from $3 to $4 to eventually $5 a gallon? Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Grocery bill is going to be about $1,000 a month. Soaring fertilizer prices are about to increase the cost of food. Right, guys, this is why we prep. This is why we put food away. Not only just for a freaking nuclear emergency, but for when prices go up, all right? If you got your rotation of food, all right, you can stretch things out a little more longer, and it actually works out a lot better with budgeting to store up food, right? You get canned stuff, you get things that last, and you switch them out and rotate it. That's the way we do it, guys. You learned today that 15,000 Mercs sent to Ukraine from around the world to help. Well, good. They need every man and woman and child they can get, evidently. I know DJ was, DJ and I are both struggling with the fact, like, I remember when I was younger, I did all that shit, right? I never got over to Iraq, but I did all the training to go. I literally, anyway, then I got distracted with the fire service. I would have jumped at this opportunity. I would have been on the next plane, man. But now, like I said, I'm older. I got people depending on me. I depend on me, right? Like I don't have as much fight as I used to when I was 23, 24, But, actually I heard James Yeager's going over there. God bless that guy. I really like him. We also have had him on the podcast. Solid dude. I've trained with him many times. Love that guy. But from what I hear, he's going over there. And he's like, I think he's in his 60s now, close to it at least. So they got a really great deal right now going on with ReadyWise, 150 servings in an emergency food bucket. All right, that's $79.99. If you go to Costco deals online, right, you'll be able to find that. So ReadyWise food supply, you get 150 serving food bucket for $79.99. Guys, that's not bad. I would be figuring something out right now. A Russian billionaire. This is the story I alluded to earlier. A Russian businessman has put a $1 million bounty on Vladimir Putin's head, calling for military officers to arrest him as a war criminal, which is absurd to me that nobody has yet, because the military doesn't want to be in Ukraine. I mean, you see countless video after video after video of these Russian troops that are captured. And they're saying, we don't want to be here. Like, we don't believe in this. This is ridiculous. Now, whether they're just saying that for the Ukrainian forces so they don't get killed or tortured, I don't know. But I have to believe, at least with some of them, that they're telling the truth. NASCAR legend Richard Childress to donate 1 million rounds of ammunition to Ukraine from his private supply. Let me cover up my SOI here. Hold on. I want to show you this guy because he's a boss. This guy, damn it. Over here, this guy donating 1 million rounds of ammunition to the Ukraine conflict, which is awesome. The official at the French Elysee presidential palace said, Mr. Putin, Mr. Macron, the invasion will continue until the end. Oh, so Putin told Macron that the invasion will continue to the end, unless negotiations met all of his terms. U.S. warns Moscow, Minsk against developing nuclear arms in Belarus. As you guys know, they're going to be giving Belarus nuclear capabilities now. Yeah, go Childress. Bill Gates has bought a huge amount of commercial farm within the United States. So there's that. Yeah, who knows what he's doing with that. Ukraine says it has agreed with Russia to create a safe corridor backed by ceasefires to evacuate civilians and deliver aid, which is good. French President Macron confirms that he will run for a second term. Ah, Tyler.
Hey, Will, how are you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm hanging in there,
You, sir, must be busier than a beaver building a dam with all of what's going on right now.
A bit, and we'll see how much we can go into tonight. Just gotta be careful about what I can and can't say, but I think we can speak in generic terms. And most of what's happening right now with Russia, most of what we're seeing, you can piece together with open source intelligence.
Yeah.
What you're seeing online, what you're seeing, whether it's through social media accounts. Most of it, if you're keen and you know what to look for, you can see how things are playing out. And so, we don't really need to have a bunch of supporting, governmental information to confirm what we're watching in real time. So anyway, but yeah, we're doing good. How about you?
Yeah, no, we're doing good over here, man. All things considering, I was just telling the viewers, we were going through some of the news, and I was telling the viewers how, look, I'm really hoping things don't deteriorate here, but it's I don't know if there's a way out of this one or not. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. Yeah,
absolutely. And so, I mean, obviously the issue here is that we haven't had a direct ground war of this scale since we invaded Iraq and Afghanistan. And so I think, we're right now looking to see, hey, what does this look like for us, obviously, as a member of NATO? What does this look like for neighboring European countries? And specifically, what does this look like for the rest of the world? The conversation can't be had without also talking about what's going on with China, what's going on with North Korea. And so this is something that I think is precarious. However, there is still breathing room. And with all of the rhetoric that's happening, on both sides, whether it's, the information coming from Russia or whether it's the information coming from Western media, there is still a chance that this thing can de-escalate depending on what happens, not only with Russia and inside Ukraine, but how NATO responds and how careful or uncareful they are with their. So again, heightened sense of alert, absolutely. But it's not World War III yet, and it doesn't have to go to World War III, depending on how people respond. Obviously, for the rest of us sitting back, we're not in control, and so we're kind of helpless captives here, going, "Oh, please, dear leaders, all of you make intelligent decisions." We'll see.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. And we try not to be honest. I won't bullshit you, man. We do get political on these programs, but with our guests, we don't get political. But I'm just going to say this from my end. I actually don't, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. I don't think Biden's handled this terribly. I mean, he could have handled it a lot worse. It does help maybe him being a little sleepy or something, so.
Well, and I think I think the fair criticism here is the language, right? When we have world leaders, we expect them to be precise in their language, especially as tensions start to raise and we moved closer to kinetic conflict, then we really expect them to be serious about the words that they use and the actions that they take. And so I think this is, again, for a statesman who is a senior statesman, I think people were expecting more, say something very specific and don't mince your words. And, for all of the things that are there for our leaders, there are other NATO leaders that did the same thing, that said nothing. Some of them, put their foot in their mouth and said the wrong thing. Some of them were very soft and weak. And so, again, hindsight's 2020, we can go back and go, wow, we should have been very specific here, or we should have been vague. In some cases, maybe we should have been more vague. Instead of saying, here's what we are going to do or aren't going to do, maybe we should have just said, hey, look, we will defend our allies. That's probably what we should have said. And instead it was, we're not going to do X, Y, Z up to this level. We're wondering now if that didn't give him a green light. So, and by him, I mean Putin specifically. So I think we're coming off of the withdrawal in Afghanistan. And okay, what does that mean? We were able to walk away in Iraq to such a degree that saved face. We were able to say, yes, we're choosing to leave and under our conditions. And whether this was planned or not, I mean, I know, like you said, the politics, right? We can go all the way back to President Trump and whether or not he set the conditions and how people respond to that. We don't really know. We as everyday citizens are not privy to the intelligence update briefs that they were getting as commander-in-chiefs on a daily basis. So we'll find out, in 15 years time, that stuff may be declassified and we'll find exactly the information that they have. But in the meantime, the question I have is, what does that look like perception-wise to our potential adversaries? And so that's my concern, is that whether or not we are weak, perception sometimes is reality. And that's another interesting thing so for us in the military side, we like to pretend, yep, what we're doing is we're just executing. We get orders, we execute those orders, whether it's at a national strategic level, operational or tactical level. And we sometimes forget those things are nested inside the political objectives. And so what our statesmen say, that will shape our military operations and what is and isn't on the table as far as response. So, it is intertwined. It's difficult to talk about because there's so much emotion involved. And in this case, there's a lot of fear, right? I mean, on both sides. You look at Russian media, what are they saying? We're number one, we're winning. And oh, by the way, you should fear the West. What are we saying? Ukraine is winning. They're putting up a heck of a fight and you should fear the East. What's the truth? It's very difficult to say. So again, I personally, when I look at the Western media, I just want to tell these guys, you guys need to pump the brakes.
Yeah.
If I could talk to each and every one of them, say, you also need to be careful about your words because everything has a meaning and the whole world is watching and seeing whether or not, those phrases are going to be interpreted the wrong way, or whether or not, our enemies are going to interpret the wrong way. So, I think maybe that's why this is so different, right? Because in the past, we invaded Iraq, we controlled a lot of the narrative. If you looked at Eastern media, specifically Russian or Asian media, 2003, our invasion, we were not the golden children of the world. I was, France saying, "Oh my gosh, you guys are going to commit war crimes. We're not going to, support you." So I think it's one of those situations where, we're in a gray zone. Russia and Putin is operating inside of a gray zone. They are just outmaneuvering the West and seeing if we're going to blink. And there is a chance that we, circle the wagons with NATO and demonstrate, okay, you got one piece of Europe, you're not getting any more. That has the potential to stop him from continuing.
You think that if Putin really senses NATO is willing to commit to an all-out war, that he will stop?
I don't know about Ukraine. I think he knows that we are not going to strike him while he's in Ukraine. So he has that maneuver space just inside of Ukraine. Outside's a different story. And so if NATO is smart, what they would do is, and they have been, they've started the process. Latvia and Estonia both called for Article 4 of the NATO Charter, which is an emergency convening to address a existential threat, right? We believe we're about to be invaded, so we're going to convene an emergency meeting. And Charter 4 or Article 4 requires all of the NATO members to show up. Basically, you can't punt, get here now. And so I think that was a good step. Enact Charter 4 or Article 4 and say, look, everybody show up, and now we need a unified response. What's the response? And the response so far has been, we're discussing pulling Finland into NATO. We're discussing pulling Norway into NATO. And to me, I don't think that they've done the unified, no more, none shall pass. This is the line in the sand, and we mean business now. And we had the same thing with President Obama. When I was in the Army in 2014, we immediately went to Estonia as soon as Russia invaded Ukraine the first time, right? Yeah, Donetsk and Luhansk. Russia comes in after the Maidan protests, and we immediately went to the Baltics and plussed up on the border. And at the time, the red line was nothing past Crimea. And so Obama drew that line. And so what did Putin do? Okay, nothing past Crimea. He didn't. He stayed in Donetsk and Luhansk. They continued to support that insurgency that was there, and they stayed and occupied in Crimea. We set that red line. And at the time, the conversation also was, is he going to cross it? Is he going to come north of Crimea into the Dnieper River basin? And he didn't. And so part of me, while I have my personal qualms about that time period in that administration, I have to say, yeah, maybe Obama should have said it ahead of time, but when it did happen, he said, here's the new line. And I do believe that helped check Russian aggression in Ukraine. What happened now? New president. We're leaving Afghanistan on unfavorable terms. And I think this is the signal that maybe NATO's not going to do anything. So
that's the problem with NATO, man. I mean, it has to be a unified response, right? But good luck getting everyone unified.
That's right. And I think that this is maybe a good segue into just to, talk about, the military side of everything as well, because, right now, obviously, everything's really big geopolitical. Yep. Let's broad strokes here. We're worried about all of these different things. I think from a military's perspective, deterrence comes from two things. And this is what we're talking about specifically. It is deterrence. It's saying, if you do this, then this will happen. And that's going to keep you in check. And so the first one is capability. We have the capability to do something about it? On paper, the answer is, as long as NATO all unified, yeah, we do. We do have the capability to check Russia if we went to direct ground combat. Taking the nuclear option off of the table. Let's pretend that doesn't exist for a second, because that does change things. And I recognize that. Some people will rightfully point out, wait a minute, doesn't matter how many, doesn't matter if you have the better tank. If we all have nukes, what happens, right? Okay, fair enough. But let's pretend for a second that's off the table. We're just looking at capability. We have the capability. The problem, the second issue, is the will. Are you willing to use that capability, and can you demonstrate it? That's the third thing. Has it been demonstrated? Because you could be bluffing about your will, and you can also be bluffing to some degree about your capability. But have you been willing to demonstrate it? What just happened in Afghanistan? We weren't willing to demonstrate that we would stick it out on our terms. So, that's that thing. And then the second thing is the willpower, speaking clearly. This is why our politicians have to say, this is black and white. If you do this, then this. And so if you say, well, we condemn this and don't do anything else, what does that mean? Sounds like you're wishy-washy. And if you're wishy-washy, you probably don't have the will to implement that capability. So do we have deterrence? That's what NATO's got to figure out. How do we get deterrence back onto the table? And I think it's those three things.
Speaking about deterrence, speaking about Russia possibly doing other land grabs. Now, there was a photo that came out of Lukashenko, the Belarusian president, pointing at a map. And on this map, if you enlarge it, there is forces crossing into Moldova. And I don't know if you've heard about this or not, but it's hearsay at this point.
Yeah, I did. I saw the big picture of their, I kind of, it reminds me of, Norman Schwarzkopf getting up there and briefing the invasion of, or liberation of Kuwait, right? He gets up there and said, here's the battle plans. Now he did it afterwards, which, that's the OPSEC part. Like maybe you don't brief your battle plan to the public before it happens. But then again, maybe you do for several other reasons. And one of those could just be deception, right? So the very first thing on the table is that even real? Right? I saw the Southern Thrust. It looked like an amphibious action. And, we were, clutch the pearls. We were just so silly. We're incompetent. No, I want you to think that, right? So that's number one, is deception. And today I saw that they did move a amphibious assault group off the coast of Odessa. So again, could be part of the deception plan, but also maybe not, right? But the other thing is that Russians already have soldiers in Transnistria, and that's a breakaway region in Moldova. And so there's been speculation since this thing kicked off of what are those guys going to do? They're kind of stuck there right now. And the reason why a lot of the analysts that I've seen have said, hey, look, they're not going to do a breakout. Reason being is they'll have to link up with whatever Russian thrust is going to be close. And look how far away that is. I mean, yesterday was the first day they really consolidated in Kherson, which is on the Dnieper River. And I think they made it maybe up to the next, minor town north, and they've had minor actions the last few days over that. But they haven't broken into the main Ukrainian plain yet. And so if they can't make a link up, these guys are going to be isolated out there. They better stay in friendly Transnistria. That they got supplies, like they got enough food probably hanging out there to go, yeah, we're just enough of a thorn in the backside of Ukraine that if they reposition too many troops away from Odessa, we could do something. But if Ukraine National Defense Force still has troops around that area, they basically check each other out. So so for Russia, it's an economy of force operation. It's saying we're going to keep just enough guys over here where you have to consider them and account for them.
Yeah.
So that's really what it is. Could it be that they're going to do an amphibious assault? Yeah, it could. Yeah. But probably not. That's still probably going to be enough of a deception to that side to try to force the Ukrainian Defense Force surround Odessa, maybe to do what's called a turning action, come out of that battle position and go deal with them in some way, or have the Ukrainian National Defense Force reinforce that area, even though that's not a main effort. So that's another option too. So there's, again, this is actively unfolding operationally. For as much as the Western media is saying that the Russians are getting their asses handed to them, they are moving and making ground. This is a sad reality, in the country right now. They are outpacing the invasion of Iraq 2003. They are outpacing it by estimates that I've seen is something close to 1.85 square miles per day. So 10 times the rate of the Kuwaiti invasion, and they're outpacing the German blitz into Poland by large margins. So when we look at this in terms of how much ground they're gaining, it's a lot. Debate about what's effective control, right? Okay, just because here's your frontline trace doesn't mean you have control over your area of influence. And that's been debatable. They've largely stuck to the road systems. And so, and this is not surprising to me and the guys that trade in Eastern Europe. We trained with the Ukrainian army in 2015. I still have good friends that are there fighting right now, specifically around Kiev. And they were still a red team army back in 2015. A red team army is, a threat-based doctrine. It's based off of the Soviet structure and their doctrine. And so, as a matter of fact, I think you had Chris Larson on. He Red Team Army's book right now, Smart Book's out. If shameless plug, I make no money from it. He's just a good friend of mine. He's got the authoritative source on threat doctrine. That's one of them. RTA, Red Team Armies. And if you look, they're playing by their playbook. Right, this isn't surprising. They're largely motorized and mechanized, so they're going to be road bound. That's what they're going to rely on their lines of communications for. They don't have a major helicopter lift fleet, right? You've seen most of their helicopters prioritizing VDV or their assault forces, their airborne guys, which they just take out of an airplane and put in a helicopter and say, now you're air assault, right? So that's what they've been prioritizing. So they don't have the ability to move a lot of supplies by air. but in their mind, they don't need to. We'll just control the roadways as, classic line of communication. And so they're fighting along the roads. They're running into some major problems, obviously, right? Like it's a double-edged sword. If you don't spread out and take the countryside as you're pushing, World War II style, you're going to get guys that can, ambush your rear echelon columns, right? All the guys that are bringing the, beans, bullets, and Band-Aids and fuel up, it looks like they're not being provided very much security.
Yeah, and that's a question I had for you, man. Is we see this 40-mile long convoy bumper to bumper going along, nice juicy target, yet it's not being attacked. I mean,
So that's in Belarus. Okay,
so okay.
This is still in Belarus. So what they're doing is, and I think you kind of have to take a step back here, because from our perspective, we're seeing these little snippets and we're going, well, this doesn't make any sense. This is idiotic. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? And we're not seeing the full picture. So on the very first day, which was the night invasion, when it started, they did a massive preparatory fires phase of the operation. Okay. And this is keeping in their doctrine. We have this concept too. Preparatory fires before we start the maneuver, it shapes the battlefield. And in the Russian army, they're very comfortable with what's called deep fires, which means we are now, instead of hitting forward, companies and battalions, we are now striking somewhere close to anywhere from 50, 100 to sometimes even close to 500 kilometer targets. Okay. So they did a massive deep fires campaign. And in this case, this is the first time that I've seen this to the degree that they're doing it. They are now using precision munitions. Okay. 2008 war in Republic of Georgia, they didn't. It was dumb munitions, classic artillery, MLRS rockets. Now they're starting to use precision munitions. They even didn't use precision munitions to the degree since 2014 in the conflict zone. They've largely still been using dumb munitions. So this is the first time that I've really seen them go, oh no, we're now starting to improve our targeting systems. So this has always been a Red Team Army weakness, is targeting. And so we like to say, why do they just blanket, grid squares with artillery? It's because their targeting sucks. They don't have forward elements, forward observers. They don't do stuff like that. And so that's part of their doctrine. But they're changing that. So that's one issue that's a little concerning to me, is that they're using precision munitions now more than they've ever done.
Wouldn't you think that they're using these precision munitions so that they can spare infrastructure?
Part of it is yes. Part of it's yes. I also think, and this is me 100% speculative, I think they are learning. I think to them, this is going to be part of this campaign is a lessons learned campaign.
Yeah.
And one of the suspicions that we've had and the rumors that we've had for a while with China was, and is, they are not going to make any major movements against the West or CETO, Japan, Australia, the alliance there, until they also get into a major ground war with a neighbor and get combat experience. They have no combat experience right now. And it's the same thing for the Russians. The last time they've had minor combat experience in the conflict zone, but it's been hit or miss units. They haven't been able to test entire echelons. This is a chance for them to test entire what's called battalion tactical groups, BTGs. That's what they've reformatted it. So there was this big movement in post Republic of Georgia campaign to reform the army, and this is the first time they've gotten it tested in mass. So that's what I think they're doing. Honestly, is they're testing new concepts, which I hate to say. Nobody wants to say, oh yeah, this war is it's not a simulation, but you know what I'm saying. This is they're using this opportunity for lessons learned, and I think that they know that. I think they're trying new things, and some of them are failing, right? So really, they did this big preparatory fire campaign, and then they shifted targets. And the War College out in the East Coast, and some of the Marine Corps components for professional military education, those formal schools for officers, they were doing war games ahead of time. And actually, the War Institute, they put out a publication, I think a day or two ago, that basically had an analysis of this and said, here's how we war gamed it. Here was the Ukrainian National Defense Plan. How is it going compared to that? And one of the things they noticed was, well, the Russians really shifted their preparatory fires campaign away from those initial strategic targets that we thought. So in the early stages, they were hitting airfields. Initially, they were knocking out as many aircraft on their airfields as possible. They were creating runways with those precision munitions. And they were doing that from their amphibious fleets. I mean, they were doing that from naval bombardment and using our, what we would call cruise missile. It's their version of those cruise missiles. And it seems like it had a large effect, but for some reason, and we'll find out, they shifted fires away from those targets of knocking out air defense and aircraft, and they shifted them to the Ukrainian headquarters building. They were finished destroying those aircraft. So this is why in the very first day, there's Ukrainian, MiG-29s that have been scrambling that were left, and they put up some resistance. So that's the thing we're wondering is why did they shift so early? The downside is they were somewhat effective hitting those headquarters units, and it looks now that, especially in the South, it looks now that this is what also contributes to some of the Ukrainian command and control issues. So, for example, in the North, the Ukrainian battle positions were largely outside the cities. As they get attacked, they start falling back into the cities. So Kharkiv, Kiev, those are the two major ones in the North. And this is a good strategy, by the way. In the South, they don't. They're being bypassed. And that's where they're taking the majority of the ground. And so people now are wondering, well, wait a minute. Is this because why? It seems as if no orders were given to fall back to the Dnieper. Well, they think now it's because these headquarters units were hit, right, and disrupted. So maybe it was a good idea on the Russian side to shift their fires to the head and start attacking command and control. We'll see. But so these are the things that when we're looking at it from a military perspective of operational warfighting, there's phases to these battles that are happening, and there's planning considerations that have to be taken into account. And for all of the problems the Russians are having, they're still keeping with their doctrine, okay, which is why they're gaining ground. One of the big things that they realized in 2008 and even in Chechnya, right? Don't die in the cities. What are they doing? They're bypassing the cities and encircling.
Yeah.
Everybody's going, well, they haven't taken the cities yet. The Ukrainians are winning yet. Last night, what they did was they brought up massive MLRS rockets, the Grad rockets, and they've been pummeling Kharkiv all day. Very likely hundreds, if not thousands of civilian casualties will ensue, as well as military personnel. It's not going to be good. So from a military perspective, I don't know what else the Ukrainians can do but fortify the cities. But at the same time, now you're fixed. Yeah. So at some point, they're going to have to do something, whether they get relieved through the air. That would be the classic move. You either do what's called a breakout, and it can be aided, so another friendly unit can come up and help you punch a line to get out, or you can do it on your own. But breakouts usually are a desperation move. That means we're running low on supplies, our combat power is being attrited, and this is the last ditch effort to save as many as we can to fight somewhere else. The problem is the Russian doctrine is deep attack. So good luck breaking out when I've got another 400 or 500 miles under my control. You're going to do that movement by foot, are you? So this is the thing, is that the Russians have brought so much force to bear. Out of that theater, there are close to 120 estimated BTGs, Russian BTGs. That's battalion tactical groups. And for an estimation, we don't have this formation in the United States Army. We have battalions and we have brigades. And so you're saying, oh, what's a battalion tactical group? Some of the guys who are older veterans would know, we used to have a concept called the regimental combat team. And if you ever see combat team on a U.S. Army designation, it means they have artillery with them. It's maneuver plus artillery. It's a true combined arms echelon. We don't have that. Our battalions are battalions. They're organic. And at the brigade, you'll see brigade combat team. That's where we have our combined arms. So we go an echelon up, and we don't, just for comparison, we don't have a lot of combat power in our infantry brigades or even our armor brigades compared to the Russians. Their BTGs are heavy on teeth. I mean, they've got 3, sometimes 4 motorized rifle regiments or motorized rifle companies plus tank companies. Those are in the motorized BTGs. The armor BTGs have the opposite. They have 3 to 4 armored companies and a motorized company. And then they have an equal amount of artillery. In some cases, they have an entire extra battalion attached to them in artillery. So when we're looking at combat power, these things are heavy. The problem with that is now they're seeing, it takes ammunition to shoot all that. It takes a lot of fuel to run all that formation. It takes a lot of food to feed that formation. And so what it seems is that the Russians are now paying for having this heavy battalion concept. They weren't ready to support it. They're running into command and control issues. BTGs are ad hoc units. So the theory was, just like our brigades, you could plug and play battalions wherever you're at and form up into a new headquarters. Well, if you haven't done an exercise with them before, and now you're listening to some, brigade commander or regimental commander you've never worked with as a battalion, how do you think that's going to go? For all your training that you've done, unit cohesion's a big thing, right? I mean, whether or not you're gelling with your team, sometimes that's the deciding factor. So they're running into those issues, but they're still keeping true to their doctrine, which is it's called Echeloning of Forces. And so what they do is they say, look, we're going to make multiple thrusts, and you'll see Kiev's one, Kharkiv's one, the Donetsk front is one, and then Crimea's one. So you'll see these simultaneous thrusts, and depending on the progress of those thrusts, they will reinforce successful thrusts. So we don't have this concept in the United States Army. We have what's called a main effort concept, meaning we say, here's what's critical, and we're going to devote all of our resources and fires to that. You get priority of everything. You get priority of CAS. You get priority of indirect fire. You get priority of fuel. You get priority of ammunition, and we're going to make it work. Russians don't have this concept. This is left over from World War II. They do multiple thrusts, and whoever's doing the best, they steal from the other thrusts and reinforce that one because they're trying to get further in the rear area. And they'll keep whatever gap they exploit, they'll just fill it with as many bodies as possible and keep driving, because eventually they'll fan out and they'll start curling up your rear areas. So this is what in military terms we call it being bypassed. I'm sitting here in a fighting position and I'm waiting for them to come, and they just drive right around me. I'm like, oh, I guess they didn't want to fight today. No, they're destroying my rear area. All of that stuff we said that was critical with the ammunition and the food and all that stuff. Yeah, they're killing those guys right now. And so I'm an infantryman dug in. I just became irrelevant. It's called dislocation. So this is what they're doing. The problem for them is the most successful front's in the South right now. So I'm watching and waiting to see, how are they going to resolve this conflict? Their doctrine is reinforce success. Success is happening in South. That's the longest line of communication they have. Are they going to divert all that combat power all the way around Ukraine just to reinforce that? Or are they going to adapt? What it's looking like right now in Belarus is that they are actually going to continue with the main effort concept. Maybe they're switching over to more what we call Blue Fort doctrine. It looked like in the early days, Kiev was going to be the target. Get into the airfield, seize it. They didn't destroy the capital airport because they wanted to have follow-on forces come and use it and block the president and his cabinet from escaping and decapitate their government to force concessions. They were going for the throat kill immediately. It failed. They didn't follow through. Their first echelons lost the airfield, at night. That they held it for the afternoon, and then at night, here comes they have a Ukrainian reserve brigade. I don't know how many elements, but it was big enough to go knock this battalion out. And in the video, there's a video of the very first attack on the airfield. You can see somewhere close to 12 Mi-8s. I think they can hold 24 guys apiece. You do the math, it's a light battalion. And so there was their light battalion going in. Okay, that means how are you going to dislodge a battalion? You need a bigger force. So I'm assuming their whole brigade, their reserve brigade, just went, took it back. But again, now they're reinforcing it. So, it could pay off for the Ukrainians. If they continue to do what they do and are able to ambush these supply columns, that's the best option they have. Hold the cities, ambush the shit out of the supply columns. Don't fight the main BTGs, because you're going to lose. And every time you've seen these massive fights, it's because these guys were dug in and those BTGs are rolling them up. That's just what it is. And so Western media is laughing at the Russians, saying, you're idiots. You're losing all this stuff. They're gaining ground. So, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at how is their doctrine changing? Are they doing what we expect as far as TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures? And what are some of the new TTPs they're using? So one of the things we're looking at is their targeting. Like I said earlier, their preparatory phase, it had precision targeting. How did they do that? Looks to me that they have started with pre-planned target packages. So special forces, ground intelligence networks ahead of time, they had mapped out these targets. They had your grid locations for all this stuff and all their priorities of fires. And so they executed. They already had these plans. They just executed it. Now, how are they doing? Well, all those firing packages, they've already been shot. So now how are they targeting? One of those was special forces elements. So where we see special forces kind of in a different role, they can do targeting, but mostly we see them as, direct action raiding forces for high value targets or infrastructure, maybe a bridge or a dam or even deep reconnaissance. Most of the time we save these guys for really, really special things. The Russians don't really have the same type of concept. They're mostly focused on other types of shaping operations, still establishing that civilian network connection, right, ahead of time before an invasion. But really, they're the guys who are going to be the targeters. The problem is it goes both ways. They're being caught. Whatever units or whatever means that you're using to communicate, these guys are getting caught by local civil defense militias or Ukrainian militias. And I'm not talking about, guys who had trained together and now they're in their reserve unit. I'm talking about civilians that, just 4 or 5 days ago were driving a taxi and now they've been given a gun. These guys are catching Russian special forces, and they're killing. Sometimes they're bringing them in the streets and executing them right there. So for me, I'm looking at this going, wow, these guys way underestimated not only the Ukrainian will to show up, but also I think they underestimated their hatred. For the guys that I know in Ukraine, this means blood. They're not going to forget this. They were hating them ahead of time. There's nothing more than that. What they want is to kill Russians. And I think to some degree, vice versa, the same thing. There's some Russians that absolutely would give nothing else than to kill Ukrainians. It goes that deep and that far back. But the militia networks, that's one of the things I'm impressed with. Citizen militias standing up. What can you do in a militia in a big war? Well, you can disrupt special forces operations. Because believe it or not, those Ukrainians that are in these villages, they're going, wait a minute, that guy not only is speaking Russian, but he's not from here. What's he doing here? There's a war on. What are you doing here? Yeah, okay, you're easy to catch because now you're out in the open. So the Ukrainian militia, to me, after this is over, I think they're going to be the unsung heroes of this thing going, they completely disrupted Russian special forces operations. And that has really hindered their targeting. And you can see that. They're going now back to dummy munitions, right? They're going back to dumb weapons because their precision targeting is getting degraded. Another interesting thing is, and I don't know if maybe some of your guys have seen this, downtown Kiev, Kharkiv, people are using their cell phones and they're using their cameras and they're seeing IR lights, IR strobes going off, right? Okay, that's Russian target. They're targeting. They're saying here, there's a beacon, fire on that beacon. That type of stuff. So, and again, Ukrainian average day citizens, even mom and pop sitting in their house, filming the bombs going, hey, wait a minute, what's that over there? There's a strobe, that type of thing. Another thing that they're doing, and this is kind of interesting too, I'm waiting to hear a little bit more about it as far as targeting, is there's a thing called, there's an app or a platform that you can use that's called microtasking. And I'll be honest, I don't know that much about it, but basically somebody says, hey, I need a bunch of these little tasks done, and I need you to go to this location and tell me something about it, and I'll give you a small payment. Well, whether it's Ukrainian nationals not knowing what this is for, I mean, to me, I'd be hard pressed to go, wait a minute, some random person on the internet is asking you for a grid and they'll pay you money during a war, and you're not going to find that suspicious. But anyway, so whether it's Ukrainians that are doing it or Russian special forces are doing it, what they're doing right now is going around and people have been caught. That's how we know this. They've been going around to, let's say, like the power plant and microtasking. They'll put their grid coordinate in, send it up and go, okay, I just got a payment and walk off. Well, what it's doing is going back to Russian targeting center and they're going, all right, here's the grid square of this power plant. We didn't have that on our original targeted package, but now we do. Wow. So there's some interesting things that are happening in terms of all of these shaping actions that we probably won't know until, fully until this conflict's over. Yeah. But some very unique things that, while by themselves probably aren't going to sway the battle, definitely something to pay attention to afterwards in terms of what does a modern battlefield look like? Ukrainians, some of them, and this is both sides, in the conflict zone, both sides have been targeted from artillery and drone attacks by social media posts, right? Everybody knows about all the Russian soldiers getting caught being Russian soldiers in the conflict zone prior to this. Ukrainians, unfortunately, are having the same thing. There's reports of Ukrainians posting on social media, and then within 20, 30 minutes, some of their positions are being targeted. The lesson here is stay the hell off the cell phones, guys. I'll blows my mind that you're in an active war zone, kill other people, and you're taking pictures for Instagram. I mean, if you would have told me 15 years ago that this would have been a reality in combat, I would have thought you were high. I mean, it's insane to me. On the U.S. Army side, we've had these issues too. In 2014, when I was in Estonia, we had Europe G2. They came down and had to give us a brief of, guys, stay off of Tinder. You guys, what you're doing is you're communicating with honeypot Russian spies, and they're just asking you all sorts of OPSEC based questions. And our Joe Blow, who, I'll be honest, our rotations up there were hardship rotations. It sucked. It sucked patrolling all the time and training all the time. And we didn't get downtime. And these guys were like, look, they're healthy 19, 20-year-old males. And they're like, the second I get leave, I want to go find some Russian tail. I want to go find some Estonian tail. And guess what? That gets exploited. So they had to come down and say, knock it off, guys. Get off social media. You can't be on this. It's not just for geolocation. It's all of your information that you're leaking all the time. So having those contingency plans for what are we going to do to communicate? So those are the things that we're looking at now. And we knew that ahead of time. That just confirming what we already knew. Don't bring your cell phone to combat. That type of thing. So it's interesting to see. I'm seeing a lot, obviously, and rightfully so, at the strategic level. Everyone's talking about the what's next. What does NATO do? What does Putin do? Nuclear war. What does China do? What does North Korea do? All pertinent questions. From my perspective, I'm looking at specifically force structure of the Russians. What are their updates to their doctrine? And how do we rapidly take this information and train our forces to counter these things? And so this is what we're desperately trying to do as an army, and we have a pretty good system to do this. So for people who are like, I don't know about America, there are things that we are behind on, but there are a lot of things we're ahead on. So to say, oh well, we're not capable. We are capable of immediately countering this. It comes down to willpower, and it does require retooling. We've got major issues with our merchant marine fleet, specifically all the transport ships. About 4 or 5 years ago, they did a big exercise. Of the 12 ships that existed, only like 2 or 3 were actually fully, mission accomplished. Whatever task they were given to deliver supplies to a theater, they accomplished. Everybody else, literally everybody else, something like all 8 of the other ships had crew issues or maintenance issues, or there was something that prevented them from accomplishing their task. So those are big things that at the national level, we have to devote resources to. We have to have a what I call a scaling plan, right? You think about World War II, we had a little rinky-dink army, and all of a sudden we turned it on. We drafted everybody. We got the war machine turning on with our factories. We started producing things, and we started getting, some type of combat power built up. We did this all the way up into the 80s with Reforger, which stands for Return of Forces to Germany. And we did these exercises. We haven't done those exercises since the 1980s. Some of our pre-positioned stock in Europe is depleted and it hasn't been replenished. Not every, the idea is you're a tank crew from, Fort Hood. Don't worry, don't bring your tank. You'll have a tank in Europe. So you just fly on an airplane, hop in and turn the tank on. That's the theory. It doesn't work that way though. And the Russians are figuring this out too. One of the things is they moved all of their mechanized forces into theater, self-powered. Normally what we do is we railhead them. We put them on rail cars because if you're driving tanks, now you have to do maintenance on the tanks. Right. You're going to have broken tracks. You're going to have broken sprockets. You're going to have, engine problems. So they drive them self-propelled all the way out there, probably to get them training. They probably thought in their mind, yeah, it's going to get these guys experiences doing route march, on a roadway. But the problem is from our standpoint, we're seeing, we don't think they've done the maintenance. So they did this big exercise, Zapata, got to do their live fire practices, probably didn't do their weapons maintenance afterwards on their guns, honestly, not just individual rifles. I'm talking about main battle guns for their main battle tanks, that type of stuff. And then that's the reports we're getting. Some of these guns are malfunctioning. Some of their maintenance, they're having maintenance issues. Yeah, it takes a minute to refit your army from a training exercise. Ask anybody who goes to one of our CTCs, NTC in California, or JRTC down there in Polk, or even JMRTC in Europe. Ask them what after you get done with a 30-day box rotation. It's maintenance, and it's heavy maintenance. So yes, we're looking at it going, well, that's kind of what an amateur army does. Yeah. They've got some amateur ass stuff that they've done, but they've also are showcasing some capabilities that we haven't seen yet. And so I think it's more of a let's take the good and the bad and be realistic about it so we can prepare for it instead of we're the best. There's no we're the best. We're going to win no matter what. And oh my God, it's the end of the world, World War III. I think those are way too extreme, well, from what I'm seeing. So anyway,
now I have a question for you here about. This ties into, so the Russians were on a field training exercise before all this happened, right?
That's right.
I know personally from One Shepherd, and you know better than me from being in the Army, it takes it out of an individual soldier to be on a FTX for that long.
It does.
Do you think that had anything to do with, the individual Russian conscript or Russian soldier seems like they just don't have much of a fight in it? Could that be partially some of the reason?
Sure. So think about D-Day, right? We start building up combat power in England. And if everybody's ever watched Band of Brothers, there's a few scenes, probably just went right over everybody's head. There's a few scenes in there where these guys are intense. Before the invasion, they're running around the countryside. At some point, they go, all right, everybody come to the marshalling areas. And there's sea wire around them. And there's MPs, and they're not allowed to leave anymore. And then what happens? Their mail starts getting censored. Now you can't communicate. And we're not going to tell you exactly what's happening. But you're about ready to do an invasion. Everybody figured that out, right? Like, oh, we're going to go attack Europe. We don't know where yet. That's the same thing. They went and got isolated for a reason. That's OPSEC, right? You're on a training mission. That's what you need to know right now. You're here to train. And the second that it was time to, now it's here for you to invade, that was probably days, if not hours prior, for a reason. Does that have a psychological effect? Hell yeah. I just told my wife and girlfriend and I was coming to do a training exercise, and you're telling me we're going to go shoot Ukrainians? It's going to have an effect. Now, for the professional soldier, this is going to have a less of effect. Professionals are professionals. These guys are like, and this is the difference between the Russian army. They've got contracted soldiers, which are what we would consider professional soldiers. These are full-timers. They've already done a conscription, and now they've been offered the opportunity to stay on full-time. Those are their professional guys. Then you have your conscripts. And those guys are within, they have a 2-year conscription, and they're required to do that, and then they get to go home, and now they're part of the reserve pool, just like the old Soviet war mobilization plans. The problem is that these BTGs, some of them are, and this is what we don't know yet, but what it seems to me is they are using what's called a roundout company or a battalion, okay? What's a roundout? So in the United States Army, we have this concept. We have our active duty guys, and then every single brigade in active duty has a National Guard sister battalion that if we go to war, they then join up with the active duty guys. Okay. So I was in 173rd in Europe. Our roundout battalion is actually a Texas National Guard battalion. So the theory is as World War III kicks off, those guys show up to Europe, and now we've got a 3rd Rifle battalion. It looks like the same thing's happening with the Russians. Some of these BTGs looks like they have roundout companies, which those are the conscripts, right? We'll pull these guys in. Well, Russians also have something similar to us, right? In U.S. Army doctrine. And that is make contact with the smallest element possible forward, right? So when let's say we do a move into contact, right? We have our vanguards that are out there. We want the enemy to shoot at the smallest element possible first, and allows us to develop the situation and maneuver without getting decisively engaged. The Russians have this same concept. They say, yeah, we need to move, we need to make contact with the smallest units possible. And who better to do that than the conscripts? That's what they're thinking right now. So that's why a lot of these lead elements are also getting, just schwacked. And it looks like, oh, these guys are so unprofessional. think they're sacrificing their roundout companies.
Hmm.
So when these guys are getting captured, which your professional soldiers are probably going to fight to the death and retreat and all this other stuff. I'm not saying they're not going to surrender in some cases, but your conscripts, if there's nobody around and I got left to guard this road junction and I only was given a day's ration and it's day 2 and there's a war going on and I don't think anybody's looking and I'm not really a professional soldier, I might just leave my tank and I might just turn myself into the first person that has food and hope that I get out of this thing. We saw that in Chechnya, the first war. Russell were literally, isolated. And then when doesn't care about me, I'm leaving my tank. And in some cases, they were selling the rifles to Chechens, their enemies, for food. So that seems to be old school Russian army right there. But it doesn't look like that's their professionals that are doing that. So when I see that, I'm like, yeah, I expect that of their conscripts. But remember, they've only deployed about 50% of their combat power in theater. Out of the 120 BTGs that are there, only around 50 have been deployed. So, when we're talking about force, structure the disposition difference between the Ukrainians and the Russians, they're going to be able to be throwing a lot more at them here in the next day or two. And that's what we're seeing. You asked the question, what about this massive call in Belarus? Well, one, they're in Belarus, so they feel more comfortable not being targeted like that. That's why they're in that formation. But there's other places where they've gotten log jammed. So I think that's why Western media is keying in on that and going, oh my gosh, massive column. Yeah, it'd be a juicy target, but Ukraine's Air Force has been degraded. They're having difficulties getting sorties up. And it's not clear if they've all been destroyed. I don't think they have, but how many are left and where are they refueling? Some rumors are saying that they're refueling on roadways, which, by the way, for our people, in the United States, U.S. interstate is a military system. There's reasons why there's federal regulations of how wide a interstate can be. It's because we need to be able to land helicopters and jet fighters to refuel and rearm. We can do that to any runway. Bridges. If you look at our bridges in the United States, they all have weight classes. What's that for? Main battle tanks. They have to be minimally compliant so our M1 Abrams can drive across them. So we have all of these systems in place for these exact reasons. And so the Ukrainians are using that too. They're using their highways to refuel their jet fighters. They may be leaving the country. They may be going to Romania or Poland somewhere where they're not being, observed to refit and refuel. I don't know. It's hard to tell because, again, most of the focus is on the ground war. And there's really a lot of rumors as well. As you know, everybody's kind of picked up on that. There's a lot of propaganda, a lot of rumors. We have to wait and see. But yeah, the Russia thing is interesting, obviously, and it's topical for my job. But I would just say that, again, while it's precarious and it can get serious real fast, we're still in a gray zone. Russia's still operating in that envelope that allows them to push the limit. And as long as we do mind our P's and Q's and say, this is my opinion, as long as we mind our P's and Q's and say, this is the red line and say, don't cross it, I think that's our best bet, as opposed to, attack now. Again, they are nuclear power. Putin has said this multiple times, and everybody rightfully is pissed at him for even mentioning the phrase nuclear holocaust or hinting at it, right? I don't think he said that as phrase exactly, but he basically explained, look, this war will be like on any other war, and none of us will win. And so we know what he means. And then,
do you think that Putin is operating from a deteriorated mental state at all?
I've heard this. Who knows? I don't know. I haven't seen anything concrete that would suggest that. There's rumors of him running away to the Ural Mountains. Honestly, I think a lot of it is rumors and propaganda.
Yeah.
I think we want to believe that somebody would be mentally deranged to threaten nuclear war.
That's what makes me wonder, man. Is like, you don't, world leaders don't come out and say things like that if they're thinking clearly in the head.
Unless they're calling a bluff.
Right. Exactly. And he's been very good at that thus far, he's ex-KGB. He's smart as a fox, but I don't know, man. Maybe it is just psychological warfare, but he's got everyone else believing that he's definitely a little bit wrong in the head.
Sure. Well, and it might backfire. Like I said, Finland and Norway are talking about joining NATO now.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and we did the same thing, to be fair to some of our adversaries in the United States, Iran being one of them, right? We invade Iraq. We say there's weapons of mass destruction. And from a military standpoint, that phrase weapons of mass destruction, it's actually a category of weapon systems. It's nuclear, biological, radiological, and chemical, right? We say, hey, these are WMDs, and in the military we call them CBER, right? Or CBRNI, that's the new phrase, but or NBC is the old phrase. And so when I heard that, I was like, yeah, chemical weapons. He's used it on his own people before. I know you have WMDs. Then they started making the case, oh no, Yellow Cake 7, it's nuclear. They have these nuclear weapon systems. We get in, they don't exist there. And there's speculation, they moved them, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is the world went, wait a minute, you said they had nuclear weapons, that's why you invaded, but they didn't. And some of our adversaries said, maybe I need to get nuclear weapons because if they really had them, you probably wouldn't have invaded.
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of backfired on us. The justification of going in there and saying it's because they are building nuclear weapons. I'm wondering if it's not the same thing. Hey, you threaten nuclear war in the continent. All of a sudden, these other people that are probably going to be neutral, they're like, oh, maybe I need to join the other side. So, it could backfire on him, or it could get him exactly what he wants, which is NATO stay out of Ukraine.
Yes. It's going to be really interesting to see how this transpires. I mean, obviously, I'm not a tactician like yourself, but in my opinion, I mean, there's really no hope for Ukraine. The only hope that I could see going on here is that they put up over the span of the long term, 5-10 years, they put up enough resistance that Russia says, hey, it's not worth it. Kind of like our Afghanistan, right?
Yeah, I think that's what everybody's thinking right now. I can see an outcome in which, and let me preface this by saying, I find it interesting that one of the concessions that Putin is requiring did not include President Zelensky. He didn't say anything about the current administration being able to serve or not serve. Normally, that's a thing. Normally, when you are getting ready to conquer a country, say, and oh, by the way, your regime that's there, they can't be there anymore. Our leaders get to come in. He hasn't said that yet. He said, I need Crimea, and you have to recognize the two breakaway regions as autonomous sovereign states.
That's
so
all.
I'm wondering if the idea isn't here to put the boot on the neck or the sword on the neck, say, I want a land bridge from Crimea to these breakaway regions so that I can move my forces there by rail, because right now he has to cross between the Azov and the Black Sea via ship, ferry. That's not good. And say, okay, and oh, by the way, and he maybe even ask for everything south of the Dnieper and say, here's the new national boundary. I'm hoping that's the most he asks for, is to say, I just want the south. You take the north. I know, and this is where I think that they're being, I hope that they also recognize they can't occupy this country long term. I think they know that. And I fail to see what they get out of keeping the capital, other than to say we conquested. The West is saying right now he wants to reestablish the Soviet empire. I don't 100% agree with that. I don't think that's exactly what's going on. I could be wrong. Tomorrow he could invade another country, and I'll go, well, now it's looking like he wants to reestablish the Soviet empire. But right now, and by the way, there is another potential theater here. If you look south of the Republic of Georgia, I'm concerned about Armenia and Azerbaijan. And if you notice, one of the things that Putin did right before this war kicked off was he made trade agreements with China, specifically for their natural gas. He's been insulating himself from other types of potential sanctions by buying things like gold and Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not by accident. And as a matter of fact, I think their Secretary of State said something right during the first few days of this invasion was, we've been preparing for these sanctions. Right? Like they know, they knew this was going to happen, and they've had several conflicts to prepare for this. So what does that mean? Well, who needs gas more? Who needs to sell the gas more or use the gas more? Europe. Europe needs to use the gas more than Russia needs to sell it. They found other selling partners.
Right.
So what's Europe going to do next? I think they're going to pivot. I think Germany gets 70% of their heating by natural gas, and it comes from Ukraine specifically. They cut off Nord Stream 2 pipeline coming out of the Baltic Sea. And so what's left? Trans-Caspian pipeline. That's in the Caucasus. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult to find news sources on this, but if your guys look at Google alerts or something, just type in like Armenia, Azerbaijan, something like that, and have an alert, you'll see there's a ton of traffic happening right now. It's because the Trans-Caspian pipelines are coming right through from Baku, through Azerbaijan, into the Republic of Georgia, and then down into Turkey. If I were Putin, I would cut that off. I would say, Europe's going to pivot. They're going to try to find an alternative for your gas, and I'm going to block them. So it could expand past Ukraine very quickly.
Yeah, that's what we're all worried about, man. Right? Is the fact that one miscalculation by one superpower or by one, NATO country, and this whole thing blows up in our face. And that's a concern. But it's refreshing to have somebody on here, man, who's as knowledgeable as you to say, let me be a devil's advocate here for a second and let you guys know that, there's not all hope is lost. This and this option are still here. And, I have everyone I've spoken to up until this point has been very much doom and gloom. So it's very refreshing to get us another educated opinion on this.
Well, I mean, I hope I'm right. I hope it doesn't escalate. I hope it's actually way more milquetoast than we're being told to feel. I think that I guess that's my concern is I'm trying to remove my emotion from this.
Yeah.
And because look, I mean, I have family, I have children, nuclear war, that phrase is like, gets the blood flowing. Like, what do we do?
But to your credit, man, like that very well could be what's going on here is we've seen in every other conflict thus far that the mainstream Western media blows it out of proportion.
Sure.
I mean, not only for ratings, but for whatever reason as well.
Yeah, and I think you could take I could take a cynical approach. Believe me, I have terrible things to say about corporate media. Propaganda is a nice term for them. But let's pretend for a second that there could be a legitimate reason why I would need to get my population a little bit of a fear involved, and that's for motivation, right? Fear is a motivating factor. So if I'm saying, the situation's dire, you need to contact your representatives and you need to pressure them to do X, Y, Z. Our official national policy is now, I don't know, give weapon systems to Ukraine. You need to contact your representatives and you need to force them to give weapons to Ukraine. That's what I see the media doing. The media is saying that, there's probably an agenda involved. What's the agenda? It's whatever the executive branch has already established. Here's the agenda. And they're backing them up. And they're saying, what does President Biden want? Well, him and his cabinet are saying weapon systems. So what's the media saying? We have to get involved, okay. And it's going to be weapons. That's why I think there's that fear motivation.
More business deals.
Say again?
More business deals.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. This is, from somebody in the defense industry, I'm also critical of this as well. I see the revolving door. I got you, at the highest levels, this is an issue. This is an issue we have to solve, within our own defense industry. Institutional capture by power, money, all that stuff. It's a deal and it affects everybody. And eventually that's a question we have to ask. Is this, what is the driving motivator? Is it not the defense industry? Is it selling missile systems? Is that what we're doing? Yeah, I think it's legitimate to ask those questions. I think it's also legitimate to say, could there be a position here for that too, right? Maybe that is the best thing we do. I'm concerned about providing lethal aid in the open. I can't, part of me is kind of like,
exactly.
Hey, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, why are you announcing it?
Exactly.
Wait, we're going to send them rockets that have, it made in Atlanta, we're going to send our javelins. It's got our stamps on them. I'm not saying we don't. I'm just saying maybe we don't announce it. I don't know. That's just kind of how I think.
That was my only point in that, man. Look, I'm an American capitalist. I believe in making money however you can. And I know that a lot of people have been making, a lot of private, non-institutional investors have been making, okay, that's fine. This is America. But my point being is that, number one, it's dangerous, I think, because you got guys from all over the world, private citizens going in groups from Israel, from Ireland, from England. Then you've got these countries sending lethal aid. I mean, where does this end? This public display of worldwide condemnation of Russia, where does this leave them?
Yeah, fair points. And that's about the edge of my, when you start getting into more of the geopolitical stuff, that's about the edge of my expertise. I don't have the chops to talk about statesmanship or diplomacy. I'm
trying to kill the
Like,
enemy.
Talk about campaigning. I can talk about campaigning, operational or tactical warfighting. What the politicians do, I don't know. I'm assuming they have meetings. I know they have to go to the bathroom at some point, so I know they're human. But
that's about it.
But yeah.
Tyler, can you get into, on the individual soldier scale, a lot of our viewers out there are, preparedness minded, just civilian, guys and girls out there that say, hey, what you guys are doing over at Light Fighter Study and One Shepherd is so badass. I'd love to come train. Can you talk to us? I was just out there at Operation Winter Forge with you, and you were one of the instructors, and you just gave great tip after tip after tip. We're watching, these Ukrainian and Russian soldiers surviving out in the snow and the cold and doing all this stuff. Can you talk to us a little bit about what winter warfare for the individual combat soldier kind of looks like?
Okay, that's a fair question. So I'm gonna kind of spin it just a little bit here. So your question was, what does it look like for the individual soldier? What it looks like is it's actually a team fight, and it's more so a team fight in the cold weather environments than it is in any other temperate environment. And the reason why I say that is, if you find yourself alone in one of these, in extreme cold, you're now in survival. I'm no longer focusing on fighting, closing with and destroying the enemy. I'm now worried about, oh my gosh, how do I not freeze to death by myself? You saw the amount of equipment that was required, not only individually to keep yourself warm, but also the team equipment, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to sustain combat operations, you have to have that team mentality and the equipment to boot and the training to go with that equipment and skills. So that's the thing that I would say is, better not be finding yourself by yourself. So if the answer is, how do I get through this? It's communities, build networks. You need to be building networks in communities. Don't be alone anymore, is the thing that I would say. But the second thing is and then it comes down to equipment, and it's more so in the winter. I like to say skills over equipment, or skills over tools, because at the end of the day, as an infantryman, I am the tool. This is what I'm doing. I am closing with and destroying the enemy, and I have a myriad of weapon systems that are going to help me kill him. And if I have to, then I kill him with my bare hands at the very end. That's what I'm doing. I'm closing the distance until I can get my hands around his neck. And if that means I can shoot him before I get there, or stab him as I get there, or throw a grenade at him, that's what I'm going to do. But it's a little bit different in the winter, because now we're saying, well, there is sustainment equipment that if you don't have, you will die. Heated shelter is one of them. There's a big debate right now. Yes, drones and thermals are a huge issue. Absolutely. There are ways to mitigate it. They are not super weapons that, oh my gosh, we'll never be able to do anything, so you might as well give up. That's not true. Look what the Ukrainians are doing right now. Russians have drones and thermal. So do the Ukrainians, right? There are TTPs that you can use to mitigate all that stuff, and it's risk. There's a difference between cold weather operations and staying cold, and cold weather operations and having a hot option, right? So we called it cold bivouacking or hot bivouacking. What we practiced at Winter Forge was hot bivouacking. The reason why we do that is because our armed forces right now, our methodology is cold bivouacking. Unless you go up to Alaska and around the Arctic, Arctic Circle and the subarctic, everybody else is doing cold bivouacking. Well, you can only do that so long before you're going to freeze. You're eventually going to get wet and have to dry out. What are you going to do? So, we're beginning a lot of, conversation back and forth with this course is, well, drones, you have a tent and a heater, they're going to see it. Yes, there's some things you can do. You learned one of the things was passive, right? I'm going to hide my location. I'm going to terrain mask from the drones and that type of stuff. And that's your best bet. The best bet is hiding and not having somebody know where you're at. The second best bet is disbursement. So maybe we don't all bivouac together. Maybe our assembly areas or our patrol bases, they're not all co-located. Like you were talking about, there's a 40-mile convoy coming out of Belarus. Yeah, that's, it's kind of amateur hour. You start bringing too many people together, you create a bigger signature, right? And so there's things that we can do to mitigate this. But ultimately, what people have to recognize is everything's a risk. The question is trade-off. What are you trying to get, and what are you going to risk to get it? So that really does shift our TTPs. So for individuals, yes, equipment, and I know for a lot of guys like that's a great thing. Oh, he told me to buy more gear. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, you need things like mittens and your over whites, and you need your thermal layers, and you need a tent. You need that. Yeah, it's heavy investment in equipment. But just having the equipment alone without the training and the knowledge and the skills, it takes both. So I hats off to you. I was excited to have you there and come do the training. I encourage more people to get more training. Live Fighter Study Group, we don't charge anything for it. We worked with S&S, and they had a nominal fee. I mean, S&S didn't make money. They broke even.
Yeah.
That's not why that's not why they're doing what they're doing. And that's not why we do what we do. We're more skills based and field craft based. And so that's why we were invited in as primary instructors. This is where our experience lies in LFSG. And so, mostly using our experience in mind also from Eastern Europe. So I was in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Ukraine as well, from 2014 all the way up to 2018, on and off, 4 to 6 month rotations up on the border, that type of stuff. I trained with all those foreign national armies, and I trained both in the summer and the winter conditions there. And that taught me a hell of a lot about how to, not suck for, 2 or 3 months in the snow straight. It's one thing where you can go back and get warm somewhere. It's another thing when you have to sit in a fighting position for 5 days in a row while it's -20. That's a whole nother level of, even for us, active duty infantrymen, like, this is tough. So there are certain operating environments where we do what's called limited operations. We aren't as aggressive. Why? Because we're worried about not dying from the weather. And that's maybe another misnomer. I think a lot of the citizens that haven't had military services. What does this look and feel like when it's actually happening? And the answer is it's chaotic, it's variable, it's tiring and fatiguing. It's not perfect. We're not Arnold Schwarzenegger in every action scene he was ever in out there, tearing up the jungles of Panama trying to find the predator. That's not what it looks like. Sometimes we're just trying to make it to the next day.
Meanwhile, maintaining a perfect pump the whole time, like
get to the chopper, So I have a lot of humor about it because I'm not currently being rained on or shot at, but, so it's easy to laugh about it. But you have to get the skills and training before you do that. If it's already happening, it's too late. I feel terrible for those civilians that they've deputized and said, now you're in the militia. Here's a rifle. I know we just taught you how to load it. Good luck. I mean, that's a desperation move.
Man,
And
like you got to think about that for a second. Yeah. Like, even for us who come to One Shepherd and we spend a week, right? 1 weekend, you get your warrior basic done. Like, something, right? You're able to do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those guys don't have any of that, man.
Right.
It's Bob from down the street. Here's a rifle, bro. Like, go kill some people.
Yeah. And
it's against an army.
Right. And you can even see there's quite a few videos now of the Ukrainians, and maybe it's the right move. They're coming up to Russian columns unarmed and kind of swarming them and standing in their way and saying, go home. And they're protesting an active army who's, shooting their way through their country. For good or bad, part of me is going, yeah, well, what do you expect them to do? Pick up a rifle and shoot these guys? They're not, and some people will be like, well, hell yeah, that's what I expect. Well, look. If this is what we expect, and I think this could be a good lesson for the United States and really the Western world, right? The reason why we have a Second Amendment is another reason. There's multiple reasons for the Second Amendment. That's one of them. One of them is that we as citizens can form up into militias and defend our country from a foreign invader. Yeah. So, when we talk about this and we're saying, wow, that should be a warning to everyone in the West of maybe it's time to start thinking about civil defense. Yes. Maybe it's time to start thinking about what are we going to do when the active duty army and all of the National Guard and all of the reserves is called up in another theater? What are we going to do back here in the United States? Who's going to guard the power plants? Who's going to guard the water treatment facilities? Who's going to guard the gas station to make sure that there's not a run on it? Those types of things are critical infrastructure. And in the past, our grandfather's generation, they were expected, the men who weren't drafted, to form up. This wasn't that long ago. This is World War II we're talking about. To me, the writing's on the wall. It's so obvious. Wake up, everyone. It's time to start looking at how do we make sure that we have enough food and water in our local town municipal hall in case of emergency. And this can be for tornadoes. It can be for hurricanes. It doesn't have to, it's not, oh, we got to wait till the Russians invade us and that's what this is for. No, it's multi-purpose. I think this is the thing that you're asking about. People who are focused on readiness. What do we need to be doing? Yes, you've got your individual supplies. That's great. Now you're not a burden. You're not a burden on the system. That's important. Now you have to extend that. It's not about you by yourself. If you wait and we don't have communities, you're not going to make it.
No.
So we really have to start as people. I think what we need to do is we need to go to our local municipalities and we need to start advocating for this stuff and saying, and it doesn't have to be, I think what people are worried about, they know they're going to scare the people that are, they're just going to scare people. If I come down there and start rattling the bell right now, everyone's going to think I'm a crazy. No, there's a way to approach people. And I think it's subtly. It's see what's going, like this conversation. See what's going on over there? Yeah, they're giving grandma's rifles. That's pretty desperate. Maybe we should think about that. What can we do right now to make sure that that's not us in an emergency? So yeah, going and getting training is a good thing. And I think that's the other thing. If you look back at the militia concept in the Revolution, colonies, the idea is that, okay, you form up with your local town and that's your company, and that's eventually your regiment, whatever the case is. But those guys, largely the leaders of them, had some type of military training. And so it's easy for them to turn around as the commanders and go, okay, guys, I'm going to teach you how to drill. And, you got a, young 12 to 14-year-old kid comes in and, okay, all of us have enough military training to now bring him up.
Yeah.
We don't have that anymore. If you look at the amount of service experience in the United States, it's dwindling. I mean, we're a small cohort right now compared to the population. And so what I think that means is, going out and getting more training like at One Shepherd. You got to seek it. You got to find it.
Yeah. And that's exactly it, man. You got to seek it. You got to find it. That's what we've been doing here on this channel for a long time, is trying to make this stuff available for individuals to go out and get. Yes. Does it cost? Yeah. It costs money. How much does it cost? Different from every program to program. But a lot of these programs, like, One Shepherd, they try to make it as reasonable as possible. Now, obviously, you got Light Fighter Studies Group, who they'll let you just, am I correct that you could just come out and train, right?
Yes and no. So we are a closed membership. We're not like a leadership program. So One Shepherd's a leadership program specifically. It's a 3-year program that is sequenced to build you from individual weapons, warrior proficiencies up to collective task proficiencies. And so that's what they're focused on. Companies like SNS, they do something similar, but they've rescoped and they're looking more at individual warrior task competencies. So a lot of medical, a lot of it is shooting, weapons proficiencies, that type of stuff. What we're doing is we're Light Fighter. We are a closed membership group. So you have to be invited in. And there's multiple reasons for that. It's not worried about, who's joining us and all that stuff. And a lot of it has to do with our scope, because really what we do is we also connect a lot of these other warrior communities together. We help guest instruct in different places. And so, we're kind of backup cadre, if you will, for a lot of these schools and centers. And as well as we do every once in a while, we'll put on an open public event, and it's largely focused on field craft, land navigation, radio communications, camouflage, that type of stuff. So we do some varied things, but we don't have a standardized program that citizen warriors can come in and pay for. That's not what we do. I would direct you to, in your people, One Shepherd, SNS, those types of guys. And I know there's others too, right? There's Suarez International down Southwest. They have some type of codified patrolling program. I think there's other program up in the Northwest up in the Pacific. And then I know you got some schools like Max Velocity out on the East Coast and stuff like that, again, they're scoped differently, but really what they're doing is they're working on collective task proficiencies. So if I was going to say, hey, how do I start my own training, right? What do I need to work on for curriculum? So this is what we do in the United States military, and this is what makes us professional, okay? We have what's called task proficiency training, okay? So individual tasks, that's what it starts with, and it works up to collective. What do I mean by individual? Put a tourniquet on a limb. That's an individual task. Stop bleeding, right? Engage a target with your rifle. Put a radio into operation. Make a phone call. Those are all individual tasks that us as soldiers, we practice on, and we have a program that constantly hits these things because task proficiency atrophies, right? You don't use it, you lose it. If I don't practice putting a tourniquet on every so often, that proficiency is going to decline and I got to have to practice it again. So those types of things need to be sustained throughout your training plan. So if you've got a yearly calendar, or, we in the Army, we say planning is short-term, mid-term, and long-term calendars, right? That's the range we're looking at. We break down our plans into those, kind of conceptual phases. So that's got to be sprinkled in everywhere. And oh, by the way, those individual tasks are going to support everything else we do. They're going to build. So eventually you need to start practicing with other citizen warriors. You need to say, I need to form into fire teams. I need to form into squads. And now we need to start practicing fire team tasks, squad tasks. These are what's called collective tasks. Okay. And those can range, one Shepherd, we're saying, oh, these are all of our offensive, defensive, and enabling operations, right? This is my ambush, raid, deliberate attack, area defense, mobile defense, movement to contact, delays, withdrawals. These are all things that we're practicing as in collective mode. From there, that's a huge list. Okay. It's almost an infinite list. It's not quite, because there isn't an infinite amount of tactics that we actually have, believe it or not. It is a set limitation of tactics, okay, in military operations. But basically what we do is then we have to say, well, we can't train them all, right? And this is especially true for us as citizen warriors, is saying, well, wait a minute, what am I going to train on? I only have so many weekends a month or weekends a year that I can train. So then you're going to have to prioritize. Those are called your mission essential tasks. Here's what I'm capable of doing. Here are the 30 or 40 things I think I'm going to have to do. Now you're going to have to prioritize them and say, what can I realistically train on and what's going to be the most critical? Those are called METs, or mission essential tasks. Everything else supports those. So you have to ask, what are my mission essential tasks? And I think you mentioned to me earlier, you took the tactical intelligence course, the
Yes.
gray zone. And I think he's changed his name several times. It used to be Forward Observer. I don't know. I know he switches back and forth between branding. I see what he's doing. He's got different projects, right? To be fair, he has these different projects. And he's trying to scope it correctly, but he's got great stuff. You have to remind me of his name, Mike. His name's Mike Shelby.
Exactly.
Okay, Mike Shelby. Okay, anyway, I've talked to him when he was first standing up for Observer. I actually talked to him via email, and I could see what he's getting ready to do. And so I was excited when he stood this thing up, because so he's an ex-military analyst. And one of the things he's really big and critical on, obviously you took, I think you took was an area study course. Is that what you took of his?
Yeah, well, it was a 3-day, intelligence course. So what he did with that particular course was try to incorporate, just pack in 3 days worth of everything intelligence related, from, analysis, area study, human, all that type of stuff.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. And so one of the things that, he talked about, I think, and he had a, social media post that he said something in and said, hey, look, we are, here's our mission essential tasks, and this is what's going to be critical. And, I kind of thought, well, actually, this is your intelligence gathering capability, your area study. This is the mission essential task. You need to understand what your operating environment is. In the infantry, we had some S2 bubbas in battalion, brigade, and above that were we were feeding them information, and they were processing it, turning it into intelligence, and then actioning it down at our level so that we could make informed decisions. Where do I attack? Who's behind me? Who's my left? Who's my right? All of these things are important. And so, what he does is he's taking some really, really complex stuff that are entire disciplines in the military, MOSs, right? Military Occupation Specialties for intelligence. And he's really paring it down and going, here's your bare bones, focus on this. And he's right to do that. There's a bunch of extra stuff with military things, doctrine, all that. Some of it doesn't apply to us, honestly. I mean, I think some people think everything does. No, there are some things that I literally don't need to care about. I don't need to care about airborne platform fuel bladders. I'm never going to have a helicopter that I'm going to have to refuel a fuel blivet up for and transport it somewhere. I'm just not. So what do I need to focus on? And so, so he's got some good stuff, but we nest that under his information. What's our area study? Well, this tells us what's going to be critical in our environment. So then I reverse engineer that and go, okay, well then what do I need to be proficient in? What MET do I need to be proficient in? And I'm going to say, here's what I'm capable of doing. This is my design. And then what am I actually going to be able to do that's going to be critical? that becomes my mission essential task list. And it's driven by the area study. It's driven by that intelligence preparation of the battle space. So for us, as average day citizens, we don't have the government feeding this to us. We have to build it. That's why I was saying earlier, it has to be networks. We have to start having, communities come together and saying, like I said with the militia and the Ukrainians, they're slaughtering Russian SF. Why? You don't belong here because I know my community.
Yeah.
It's not theoretical. This is not pie in the sky. This is literally happening right now, where people with no military training, knowing who's in their village, are defeating Russian special forces. So it's possible for prepared citizens to have a marketed impact on a traditional military campaign. And then plus it's for our own security. I mean, that's the other thing too. I think, it's self-preservation too. Let's be honest. But so that's the first thing. You got to focus on task proficiency. The second is everyone already is doing this. Focusing on weapons proficiencies, right? My marksmanship, my individual rifle marksmanship. They're already doing that. There are so many training courses out there that offer shooting packages. That's the majority of civilian training is shooting. You're getting on a 2D range and they can say it's dynamic. Okay, how are they define dynamic? But they're saying, yeah, we're on these 2D ranges and it can't be more dynamic than we're all online. You can kind of get to that close to pushing the envelope of having what we call SDZs or surface danger zones. Some of these advanced schools are starting to do something like that, but they're not doing what's the third thing. So I just said the first was we need to start figuring out what we need to train on, individual tasks, and those build up to collective, and those are METs, mission essential tasks. What am I capable and designed to do? Okay. So if you're just a fire team, that's going to scope you down, right? If you're an entire platoon, you might be capable of doing a little bit more, but you got to design and decide what is it I'm going to train on and be good at collectively. Okay. The second thing is those weapons, but the third is combining the first two. It's called collective live fire proficiencies. Okay. So we take all of those tactical tasks you just practiced in one Shepherd, right? How to conduct an attack, how to do an ambush, how to do a raid, all of those offensive defense enabling operations. We take those, we combine them with your individual weapons proficiencies. And now we're doing what's called maneuver live fire. Now we're doing it for real. We're stringing it all together. We are actually having a support element firing downrange and a maneuver element moving downrange and lifting and shifting fires. You're going to run into the place that your buddies were just shooting at, and you need to coordinate that. And it takes training. And so that's the third thing that is separating professional armies from citizen warriors. Citizen warriors have always been good at individual weapons proficiencies, right? Since 9/11 kicked off, there's been nothing but shooting package training. Just recently, people are starting to figure out this one Shepherd thing, and some of the other programs in the country that are starting to figure out they need to do collective task proficiencies. So I got my start in one Shepherd in 2008. So I went through their program in a year and a half. This was back when it was a little bit smaller. Curriculum was a little bit smaller, and then I got my Black Hat training certificate with them in 2009 and taught for quite a few years. And one of the things that we realized really quickly was, yeah, this is the next thing we need to work on. And the reason why we couldn't run straight into maneuver live fire was there's not enough citizens that know what METs are. There's not enough citizens that know what collective tasks are. We're starting to get there. We're starting to get people going, wait a minute, how do we, form up into a platoon and do an ambush? Yeah. But eventually the next step is, and this is what I said, the professional armies are doing this. Now it's maneuver live fire. Now you're doing it. It's not just with blanks and miles. Now it's stringing everything together with live bullets. And that's a lot more difficult to do. It is dangerous. You have to know range design. You have to have done it before so you can build your SDZs. You can build your control measures, your maneuver box, your support by fire boxes. It takes a skill set. And frankly, there's a liability involved. I think a lot of people are like, well, I've never trained with this guy before. Are you going to go and, hop in a 3-day exercise and shoot live bullets and maneuver downrange with, Joe Snuffy you never met before?
Yeah.
So that's why I think a lot of training institutions have stayed away from that, because the level of complexity to get there requires unit cohesion. It requires all of these other foundational task proficiencies and weapons proficiencies. It's a lot, right? It's a full-time job, basically. Oh, that's why the military is doing this, because that's all we did in the infantry is that. So that's kind of the aim of light fighters. We also do maneuver live fire. And that's why we're a closed organization, saying, no, you need to have these other competencies before you join, because we're hitting the ground running. I don't have 3 years to teach you MET proficiencies. I don't have an extra 6 months sprinkled in there to teach you individual weapons proficiencies. Right. You need to be able to show up day one, shoot a qualification to our standards, and then immediately jump into conducting an attack. I can't teach you what an attack is while I'm also coordinating and controlling as a OC and safety the maneuver live fire. Yeah. That's the big reason LFSG is closed. And then of course, we come down and really, I mean, we're there to support some of the other organizations. But the other thing is too, is we look at other guys with talent and going, I think you might be ready to do what we're doing. So that's the other thing. And again, we were all from that. Most of us were from that community. One Shepherd, SNS. There were some other simulation events that some of our guys did. Operation Eastwind was one of them. It was a 9-day warfighting exercise. They used airsoft as the platform, but it's set in the Cold War. And to be honest, some of that training that I got there, that helped me, that prepared me for when I deployed to Ukraine. I mean, these guys are using Red Team armies, or they were using Red Team Army doctrine, and they have real BTRs. The guy that ran the Russian side, he had a BTR 152 and a BTR 40. And they had several UAZs and Gazas and Unimogs and all that stuff. And they would deploy. They were in their Brome Grupa, they were in their APC, and as they would hit contact, they would dismount, they would fight the fight the way the Russians fight. And so we got training on that. I was like in college shooting Russian BTRs and then joined the army, and oh wait, I'm in Ukraine now. That's a BTR. We know how to fight these guys, and it is. That's the thing is, there's only so much they can do. They have their training and doctrine. We have our training and doctrine. And, at some point it is predictable if you can master this stuff. So, so get out there, find programs, find something that's a codified program. And that's why I think, I know I keep plugging One Shepherd. I'm biased. I was an instructor there, but it's also my limited experience. I'm struggling to find 3-year programs that to teach you from the ground up individual warrior proficiencies all the way up to platoon level decision making. It's hard to find.
No, I've run the gamut with these programs, man. It's impossible to find, honestly. I mean, One Shepherd, SNS. I mean, this is the big boy stuff. The only thing else I will say is tactical response out of Camden, Tennessee. They do a lot of live fire, shift fire, all of that stuff in their
okay, fair enough.
What is it? Civilian contractor programs, which, to your point, man, was extremely interesting to see. You have to go to a reputable thing, right? They want you to have training before you go there. But to have guys within a span of 5 days, at the final X, shifting fire and with live rounds, man, it makes the hair on your back of your neck stand up for sure.
And it should, right? I mean, that's a natural response. That's the healthy response of going, oh, this is serious and it's dangerous. And that's why we train on it, is so we learn, hey, how do we control this? Because it is controllable. And in the infantry, we do it all the time. We do it every 4 to 6 months. So yeah, my first one, I was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to get killed by this machine gun who's shooting down in this, fire sack. And I'm literally watching the bunker that I'm getting ready to bound to. It is getting chewed up by machine guns. And oh, by the way, they're shooting mortar rounds over my head. And if one lands short, I'm done. And yeah, my first live fire, I thought I was going to die, especially at night. I mean, it was wild. I'm watching tracers come in and artillery's going overhead. I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to die in this field. And I didn't. And I bounded right towards that bunker, my first bunker that we took, and there goes the fire. I watched the tracer shift off. Yeah. They did it. I'm thinking, yay, thank you. And I know the guys up there on the machine guns. You're like, those are my buddies. Yeah, thanks, man, for not killing me. And they can't see me down there. I mean, they can kind of, sometimes they can, sometimes they can't, depending on how we mark our frontline trace. But anyway, but then afterwards you go, oh, there's a dance to this. There are control measures in place. My squad leader that eventually I become, I'm controlling this. I'm confirming my lift and shift signals. I'm, giving clear guidance to my fire teams, that type of thing. And then you realize, oh, it's actually not that dangerous. It's relatively dangerous, right? And so
it seems really fucking dangerous when before you go on your first one, though, man.
And that's part of mastering, you know, as a warrior. This is one of the things we do. We master both the art and the science. And part of the science is understanding the ballistics of not just what's it doing on its terminal flight, but what does it do when it hits an object? And what are ricochets versus dispersions? What are, you know, all that type of stuff? And what are the statistics of that? I mean, we've got, again, it's a swag. It's not, you know, lockstep, because some of this is still kind of theory. Given X, these things happen. But you know, you learn, okay, here's my maneuver pocket. Here's how far I can advance, you know, and what degrees off of the gun target line I can advance to before I need to call lift and shift, you know, and I might, in combat, I'm going to take a little bit more risk, right? You know, we say in combat, it's a 15-degree shift. In training, we bump the reds back out to 30 degrees off of the gun target line. So, okay, you know, now I know my zone that I can play with here, and that allows me to make an executive decision as a squad leader or platoon leader. Yeah, I'm going to take the risk, you know, or it's in training, I'm not going to risk as much, whatever the case is. So yeah, it really does require a caliber of professionalism in this discipline. And I think maybe this is why it's so difficult to replicate that, because again, you know, a lot of guys in the military, not everybody was combat arms. And specifically, and this is the artillery, all this other stuff, or armor, that those live fires look different than an infantryman's live fire. Us in the Cav Scouts are probably the most similar, where we're dismounted and you know, we're fighting dismounted. So that's a small community. There's not that many of us realistically, which is why I think that, you know, this isn't more prolific. But the only way it's going to get there is if more people learn and spread that knowledge. And I think that's kind of our motivation. If you talk to some of these training organizations, deep down, we're citizen warriors. That's what we're doing. We, you know, I always hated the idea of, oh, these are soldiers and these are civilians. To me, the word civilian it's derogatory. Civilians, we're all under the Constitution. We're citizens. We're all citizens. And the question is also, are you a warrior? You know, and if you are, you're a citizen warrior. So, you know, I think that's the idea is, you know, take it seriously, start learning about, hey, what makes a professional? And there are ways that those things can replicate. This is not, oh, you've been ordained with the holy water in order to, you know, understand discipline. Discipline is not unique to the military. But it requires you to go, okay, you know, here's my capability. What do I actually realistically need to do to improve that capability? And then I would encourage people to find a program. Find a codified program that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can spend 15 years figuring this out. You can. That's what I did. I spent 15 years. I've got 15 years under my belt and, you know, being a warrior. Or you could just shortcut that and come to a program that's already built for you. It's going to cost a little bit of money, but
It's going to also cost you your time. But are you a citizen warrior, and are you willing to put that time in there? That's it, you know?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a commitment. It's a commitment. See, and that's what I'm saying is that, okay, you know, you're in the military, you went off, you contracted. That's a commitment. But doing this is also a commitment as well. And that's why that's why the National Guard and Reserves in the military, that's why they also have people, right? It's not everyone's in active duty, because some people are like, look, I want to commit, and I want to commit in this way. You know, I'm willing to give 1 week in a month unless I get called to do X, Y, Z. Some people are saying, no, I don't want to commit in this way, right? You got some of the southern states have state defense forces. Right. They can't be deployed. They're not federalized. You know, hopefully more states do that concept. Why? Well, because local citizens are like, look, I don't want to deploy overseas because maybe it's political. I don't believe in these things or whatever the case is, but I do want to help my neighbor. You know, maybe that's an option that American citizens start realizing, oh, wait a minute, maybe we need to bring back the state defense forces. So there are other options out there that I think that, you know, it's not just we have to sit in our home and wait for the nuclear holocaust to happen.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the thing is fear happens when we feel out of control. And so then the next question is, well, what can we do to regain some control? And, you know, focusing on this type of stuff, you know, our three collective proficiencies, our warrior proficiencies. That's what these are. Task proficiencies, weapons proficiencies, and collective live fire proficiencies. So if you, that's the goal, eventually work up to collective. But if you need to start somewhere, start with your individual weapon and start with individual task proficiencies. And in order for you to realistically get some good feedback, you probably need to go to somebody else to tell you what you're doing wrong. Mm-hmm. Be coachable, right? That's the very first thing as a junior warrior, you learn really quickly. Somebody out there knows a hell of a lot more than me. And if I be quiet and just go learn, I'm going to be a lot better on the other end of it. You know, if you're walking into it thinking you already know everything, you're going to have a bad time, especially with the warrior community. Most of us who have prior service, we don't have any patience for asshattery. We just don't. I don't care if you want to come to a class and talk your ass off about all the stuff you know. I guess we should have been paying you, you know. I mean, I don't know. But for me, I was always, keep my mouth shut and learn as much as I can, and then afterwards digest it and maybe start talking about it. But I think you are a good example of a citizen warrior who said, you know what, I want to, here's where I'm at, and here's where my performance gap is. Here's where I want to be. What am I going to do to close that? Well, I'm going to make a training plan throughout the year, right? You have all these events that you do, and it's not just tactical training. Now you're integrating some of the other intelligence stuff too, right? These all things connect. So yeah, I mean, that's the other reason, the motivation for us, a lot of us guys who run organizations, is that we get to meet guys who weren't in the service. I'm frankly impressed with a lot of the guys that I've met at one. Are with the guys I served with, it's like, wow, these guys are locked on. So don't think for a second, I didn't serve. I don't have the street cred. Skills are skills, man. You you can hit a target, It doesn't, and in the end, the enemy's not going to care whether or not you have your credentials.
Yeah.
No,
I've met several guys in there at One Shepherd, man, who I could have sworn, dude, like special forces or at least like, overseas deployments in the infantry. No, I've been coming to One Shepherd for a while. Like, wow, all right, that says a lot about the program.
Yeah, absolutely, and to give credit where credit's due, I have spent, like I said, since 2008 with the program. It was formative for me. It gave me the leg up. When I got into the infantry, I fast tracked. In the first year of me being in the infantry, I was promoted as an NCO. A sergeant. So, and then, I continue to achieve from there. And then as I've gotten out, that was also formative for me to then transition into my other job, which is training developer. And so now I was able to take that experience that I had in One Shepherd, transition to the reserves. I was an observer controller for a while. So external evaluation exercises. So they, rotational unit comes in, does all those training proficiencies that we talked about. And then we provide them critical feedback and grade them and say, yeah, you've passed, or no, you didn't, kind of thing. And it's the same thing you think about One Shepherd. They have OCs there. That's what I did in reserves. But again, how did I get good at that? Well, it was because of One Shepherd. I already had practice at it, right? So for me, it was a selfish reason. I did the program because I wanted a leg up before I got in the Army. I knew where I was going to go. I was like, I'm going to go there, and I don't want to have to learn the hard way. Let me learn on my own time, and it paid off. But for the other guys who haven't gone to the service, find a program that's consistent, that's codified. It's going to put you through a training regime and make you a better warrior on the end of it. If you're just going to a one-day carbine course that you've done 12 times, just because you're comfortable with that and you're good at it, you're good at it, but you're not getting outside your comfort zone. You got to do stuff that you're not, your skill proficiency isn't there yet, and make sure not to neglect those things. So,
well said, man. I mean, guys, I told you were in for a treat, and Tyler, you did not disappoint tonight, man. You on fire, on point, as usual. Bro, I appreciate you coming on here. We could talk all night, to be honest with you, but I know it's gonna get late there, so I will let you go and be with your family.
Well, fair enough. No, I appreciate having me on too. There's a lot to talk about with this type of stuff, and I could probably go on longer than than I probably should. I could ramble for quite a while. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of training organizations out there. Find something that's going to work with your times, your time schedule. You got to make a long range, mid range, and short range training plan. You got to. I don't care if it's one event a year, whatever the case is, but have some goals you're working on. And sometimes I get that can be hard. Like, I don't know what I need to work on.
Yeah.
I think that would be one of those things that you reach out to, companies like yours. It's like, oh, hey, what do I need to be paying attention to? And I know you put a lot of content out there of here's what you can do. Here are all the myriad of things that you can develop better, word proficiencies on. So yeah, I think the guys that follow all your stuff, they already know this. So I would say that the guys that aren't listening to these types of conversation, they're the ones that are going, oh, how do I even start? Well, you got to start somewhere, and we all did. So, but find a program. And of course, I'm very biased. I think you should go to One Shepherd.
So do I.
Yeah.
So do I. But honestly, not because I'm currently enrolled, but because it's the best place to learn. I mean, hands down. Like,
well, I appreciate that. We did, and it's not like I said, One Shepherd's been around for a while. The guys that I learned from, like I said, in the mid 2000s, these guys were just phenomenal warriors. I mean, multiple conflicts, multinational. We even had instructors that were were younger men in the Rhodesian Bush Wars.
oh, wow.
That type of stuff. Just guys from all sorts of backgrounds that really hammered patrolling. It really hammered, small unit tactics. Obviously, the director, Christopher Larson, I think you've had him on this before. He's authored many small unit tactics, light infantry books. He was my primary instructor, right? I mean, I studied under him and, just soaked up everything that guy said, and really had a chance to do a lot of one-on-ones with him over the years. And also the, critical feedback is really important. And having mentors, and that's what the program is, right? It's like built-in mentors. It's not just, here's this training curriculum. Now you've got an access to a community of practice. You've got guys that you can lean on for resources. You've got questions that you can ask on your off time of, now that I have a chance to decompress and process what I just did, I have a question about XYZ. It's there. And that's the cool thing is those guys and gals, they don't make any money. That's a non-for-profit organization. They believe in the same thing. And maybe this is why I have my ethos of, I want to see as many of our citizen warriors as prepared as possible for whatever contingencies come up. So, and that makes their community stronger, which in turn makes my local community stronger as well. Right. So it increases my own, self-defense, my family self-defense. I want everybody to be prepared as best as possible. So, it's in everybody's best interest since we're all in the same tribe. And a program like that's great. And then, it was also really good for me because I also got my start as an instructional designer there. And so once I became an instructor, I started moving into curriculum design specifically for that program. So it's really good to hear the feedback that we get over the years. It took us a long time to build that program. This didn't start overnight. Like I said, it's taken us the better part of 10 to 15 years to polish that program up and make it as streamlined as it is. And so, it's kind of a passion to, get to come back and see like, wow, like these guys are, the graduation rate's insane now. When I went through, there was like, 12 of us, there's all of us guys, we all went out in the military, came back, and now it's like, 20, 30 guys a semester graduating. It's nuts. And this last FTX, we had over 120 guys in the box at the same time with helicopters. We always joked. This is the other thing too. We always joke. We're just like, one day we're going to get helicopters. And then, one day we talked about tanks. Like one day we'll get a tank,
It was sick, dude. Like that was some straight up Vietnam type stuff. It was so cool. Yeah. And it's impressive to see, how you got a group of guys coming together, guys and girls coming together, and they train for a week. And then they're able to take on, I'm always careful how I say this, but they're able to take on another regular force that trains on the regular and sometimes dominate. And it's really impressive to see that just through this curriculum, you can, I don't know how to say it, you can plus yourself up enough to really become a fighting force in a very short period of time.
Yeah. And it's, like I said, it's a fast track program. It's not, there are limitations to it. And this is where I have to be fair, is saying, okay, you're not going to walk away with the depth of experience of an infantryman.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think some of the guys walk away and they're like, we're on par with the U.S. Army infantry. The problem is that in the infantry, we would do raids, once a month. Then we do ambushes, the next month. And then we do, all of those tactics that we do in One Shepherd, every single offensive defensive enabling operation in FM 3-0, right? We're talking operations. One Shepherd does every single offensive, defensive, and enabling operation in U.S. doctrine. That's breadth, right? That's a wide breadth. You're going to get one shot at each of those. You're going to experience what it is. So when I say movement to contact, you know what I'm talking about. Now we're speaking the same professional language. So when I say, guys, it's time to do an attack, and I say, we're going to do a movement to contact, you've at least done one iteration of that. That's something sometimes active duty units don't get a chance to do. Depending on their rotation for their training calendar, they might not be able to hit all of those offensive, defensive enabling operations. Okay. So in some cases, guys and gals graduating from One Shepherd, they actually have experience on certain tactics that some of the guys in my active duty units never heard of. They've only seen it in the FM. They've never actually done it, right? In other cases, I did an ambush or a raid one time. Yeah, my guys have done it like 20 times. So it's a difference between breadth versus depth, if that makes sense.
Make total
So
sense.
it's not, but the competencies are still there. All of those mechanics of troop leading procedures and how to communicate, an intent, all of the other tactics, all that stuff is there. And so again, there's not another place like it where, hey, you're going to get a breadth of experience on all tactical operations, and you're going to get a chance to lead. That's the second critical piece of that. It's one thing to go be a part of a platoon that's doing a movement to contact. It's another thing to be the patrol leader. Yeah, that's tough, right? So now I was rifleman one time, and now I'm the squad leader the next time, or the platoon leader, and you get everybody's rotating. That's dynamic, and that's the part where I think our military has a deficiency. We get really rigid in, well, I'm the squad leader, and I'm constantly being evaluated. This is one of my biggest pet peeves is, we'd have guys do land nav. Well, okay, what happens when a soldier fails land navigation? You do land navigation course, you come back, hey, Sergeant, I didn't find all my points. Well, what do we do in the Army? We just kick them back out again. We go, okay, go. Find more points. Well, that soldier already failed, right? Why? Well, because when we go do other training patrols, I never let him practice. We're always being evaluated. If I fail to get my next objective, they're going to look at me and go, well, you Sergeant Jackson, you suck. If I let my private, he land nav and he failed, and I'm actually trying to train him at the same time. So this is the other thing. Our training mentality in the Army is kind of shifted to where we're constantly being evaluated, and there's no safe place to fail. That's what these programs is feeling inside. We have the luxury of safe place to fail. Nobody's evaluating us. It's on our own. How do we think we did? And there's danger of that, right? Like sometimes there's inflated ego, and we can say, oh, we're great. We're, we can do no wrong. We win every time. Like, okay, your training's probably not hard enough if you're not, making mistakes. So you got to find realistic training that's going to give you real feedback and not just, pat you on the back head. And this is the other problem that I have with some companies, your customer. Yeah. There's a downside to having customers, because customers in the United States are always right. A lot of the training programs that I've been to that, I'm a client, a lot of times they're not really critical of me. Yeah. I can go and train and it's, oh, you need to do this. It's minor feedback or whatever. And then it's, you all did great. Here's your certificate. I think you should tell me how terrible I am so I get better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the nice thing about One Shepherd is like, you're going to get some honest feedback. Why? I don't care. You're not a customer. I'm going to tell you what I really think. And that's what I always
like. They're not making any money off you. They're there to help you become a better warrior.
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah. So that's why I like that program. And again, I could keep kind of gushing on it for a while because it is it's kind of part of my baby that I helped grow up there. But I get training, and that's I know everybody says that buy the gear, get training, and that's. Training to me is the most important thing. I can do a lot.
Get training first, and then as you progress in your training, buy some more cool guy gear.
I actually think that's the right answer. Yeah, I actually do, and I know that's the opposite of what most of our warrior citizens do. Right? They buy they're our guys are. There's one thing that I give Americans credit for. We have a ton of firearms. I mean, And every house has got like 2 or 3 firearms. I mean, we're not worried about if we're going to have enough for our buddies. Our buddies have dozens. We have dozens. That's not the issue. Yeah, you're exactly right. If I were to do it and I was starting, I would get training first.
Yeah.
I would buy the cheapest shit I could find, go out there, do a patrol, and realize what doesn't work, and look at everyone else who is successful and go, what do you have? And does that gear make you better at this? And of course, part of this community, we don't like to say it like gear is going to make you better. No, it's not. But there is certain things that are performance based. So let me give you an example, right? Some guys have chest rigs. Okay. And I'm going to offend some guys by saying this. I know I am. Okay. BCPs, chest rigs, that type of stuff. Okay. There's other type of LBE systems, load bearing equipment systems, right? We've got battle belts and all that other stuff. Okay. Each of those have certain design purposes that are going to promote certain functional movement. So the old patrolling belts are really good for long distance dismounted patrolling. And oh, by the way, it's really good if you don't have body armor and you want to go prone, right? If I am expecting to fight in the jungle or the woods, I probably don't want to bring body armor with me. And this is coming from a guy who I patrolled all through Europe with body armor on through the woods. I've done both, and I'm saying if I'm prone, I'm not going to get shot as easy as if I'm up. If I'm in an urban fight, and this has been our experience in GWAD, if I'm in an urban fight, I'm going to want my body armor because where the hell am I going to go prone? I'm in doorways. I'm on windows. I'm not laying down on the ground. I'm kneeling at minimum usually, or sometimes peeking around corners, but the point still stands. I'm going to be exposed more in an urban environment, so I'm going to body armor up. I also want a chest rig if I'm mounted. It is easier to fight in and out of vehicles with all of my load up front. Well, I'm going to shift that if I'm going to greenside operations. If I'm patrolling in the woods somewhere, I'm ditching this shit on my chest. And I know that's going to offend guys. I do it just fine. I don't have any problems. Hey, roger that. Keep on keeping on, man. Shooter's preference. I got it. But I'm telling you right now, your functional movement is better without that on in a greenside environment. And my, defense capability is better with armor and a chest rig in an urban environment. You have to tailor your equipment to your mission. So I think that's what your guys have to ask themselves. What is my mission? Is it homestead defense? Is it my neighborhood defense? Do I feel like I'm going to be projected somewhere and have to go to another town? What are my mission sets? And tailor your equipment to that. So in some cases, yeah, equipment can't. So choosing the right equipment is important, but you don't know with that experience. So that would be my advice: is go to training first, and then find out what your mission's going to be, and then back plan from there.
Which is a great thing because that means we can buy more gear. We can have a set of gear for, the green side ops, and we can have our body armor. And
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah. And I get it. I don't poo-poo guys who have, all those different sets of stuff. I don't like it. I got it, man. I love warfighting. I love the idea of being in. That's why I wanted to do it. And that's why I went and did it. So, I got it. I've drunk the Kool-Aid. But at some point, yeah, we probably should be shifting resources somewhere else too, right?
Yeah.
Like figuring out our comms is probably a good one, and figuring out how to sustain ourselves with food is probably a good one. And I know, again, most of the guys that are preppers, they got that down. They're like, I've got all my stores in my basement. Yeah, roger. But, there's other logistical issues that we probably should be spending more money on as opposed to just buying another LBE or, another rifle. I mean, to be fair, you can only shoot one at a time,
Well, if you're really good, you could shoot two.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. So no, yeah, I mean, and again, look, I'm just one guy. I don't know. We haven't had a fight in America for a while, right? I don't know. I don't know what's going to be the best here. I have my guesses, but what I would say is if we build communities, that's going to provide some type of insulation for us to at least adapt, right?
Yeah.
You can't plan for everything, and I think that's the other issue is this kind of paralysis problem that we have, where it's infinite. All of the problems are infinite, right? Every threat, there's millions of threats. Right. Holy shit, what do? You got to pare it down. Pick what you think is mission essential. And back to the intelligence gathering, the area study type stuff, The other thing is, and this is what I work with Dr. Larson on was decision making specifically, and the engagement decision matrix that and he talked about this, I think, on your show last time, this was one of our solutions. And we did this for small unit leaders, but coming up with decision-making models that allow us to move through paralysis. So that's actually part of my expertise is human decision-making and under time stress. And that's kind of my side project passion is studying specifically how military small unit leaders make decisions. And so the study that we developed is a tool to help tactical leaders, prevent themselves from becoming paralyzed with infinite options. So I think that's another thing too, is that mindset aspect of, and I know you talk about mindset a lot on your show, is of what does that mean? Well, it translates to something like being able to cut through complexity. And on the other end of that, now we're making, what we call double loop decisions versus single loop. And this, your viewers are probably familiar with John Boyd's OODA loop. And this is it's not a closed loop system, a single loop, it's double, which means it's adaptive. And so we run into these problems as human beings all the time. How do I decide, especially when there's no time to decide, right? And the answer is you actually don't compare courses of action, right? This is the old traditional way of thinking of, I've got to weigh pros and cons to everything. No, this is not how human beings make decisions. As a matter of fact, the literature supports research that says most of our decisions, anywhere from 70 to 80% of our decisions, are single course of action decisions. It's their snap judgments. We're saying, this is what the pattern looks like, execute. We're not sitting here weighing options.
Yeah.
Right. And you know this in One Shepherd. You're a fire team leader, squad leader. You don't have time to sit there and go, I could maneuver left, I could maneuver right, I can maneuver front. Which one's better? You don't do that. You see the pattern and you just start moving.
Yeah.
And it becomes automatic. And the only way you're going to do that is to see more patterns. You have to put yourself in more situations so you can develop a schema that allows you to match those patterns. That's it. It's building experience. That's the only way to do it. And you're only going to do it if you go train.
You can tie this in 100% to hand-to-hand combat, which is our specialty here. Is I see a punch, I'm going to do A, B, or C, but I don't have time to think about it. I just need to have done it enough to react to it.
That's right. Exactly. Yep. And this translates to all martial experiences. This translates to non-martial experiences. Matter of fact, Dr. Gary Klein, who's the one that discovered this, and he studied firefighters. He studied military personnel as well. And for most people who have military experience, he also helped develop the MD&P military decision-making process that battle staffs use in the 1980s. But then he saw the problems with the battle staff. And this is not how human beings actually make critical time stress decisions, right? When it's high stakes, lives are on the line, and time is compressed, how do people actually decide how to do things? And the answer is they just execute. And that stunned him. He was like, oh my gosh, no. For decades, we've said, no, everybody rationalizes decisions. They have a pro checklist and a con checklist. And if there's more of the pro than the con, then they do that thing. No, that's not how we make decisions at all. It's way more complex than that and way more simple, scarily, right? And we just go with our gut. And
what's our gut? It's the pattern.
Yes. So you have to get reps in.
Yeah.
And I know that Malcolm Gladwell's book talked about one of his books talked about like 10,000 hours to make an expert. I don't know how much it is. I know it's debatable, but it doesn't hurt. Having 10,000 hours in a discipline can't hurt you. Yeah. I promise that. So get reps, man. As much as you can get reps on something that's realistic, the better. And so, exactly what you guys are doing with Gutter Fighter and with hand-to-hand combat stuff, the more you can spar, get a sparring partner. It's the other thing some of these training programs can do. You get sparring partners.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of the problem that I have with some of the, 2D flat range carbine training. If that's all you do, man, you're so far behind. It's not about just engaging a target the fastest. I promise you. In combat, it's a collective game, and it's quick, and it's based on decisions, and it's how many dudes you can bring barrels into the fight with.
Mm-hmm.
We win in squads and fire teams and platoons. We don't win individually.
Well, we're seeing that in Ukraine right now, aren't we?
That's right. You don't win individually, not in a fight. If you're by yourself and you're in a fight, you're in trouble. Yeah. And I know that's kind of like what your guys are, that's your scope is going, okay, what happens when I'm in trouble, right? How do I survive and get out of this? It's valuable. Just like the very first part of our conversation here. What does the individual do to prepare for cold weather operations? it's survival at that point. You just shifted into the new domain. It's no longer about cold weather combat. Now it's about, oh my God, I don't want to freeze to death, you know? So we try to say, don't get into that situation. I know obviously people will. So that's where your type of, discipline comes in, is if you find yourself in the worst case scenario in a hand-to-hand fight, because to me as an infantryman, that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I'm going, wait a minute, like, where's my firearm? Like, something like that. Or I probably should have killed you before I got that close. I talked about closing with destroy the enemy. I'll be 100% honest. I'd rather you be dead before I get up to you. But when I do get up to you, I've got my fire team with me. See, that's the other aspect, is I don't have to go alone. But anyway, I think learning about this type of stuff and about decision making, right? I mean, who cares about how humans make decisions? It affects you. As a citizen warrior, absolutely affects you. You better learn. You better figure out what they're talking about. There's a lot of misinformation out there too, even in our own community. I mentioned the OODA loop, John Boyd's OODA loop. Oh my gosh, there's terrible information out there. People have got it flat wrong.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like, how much do they study Boyd versus just regurgitating what they heard?
Oh yeah. There's a lot of that going on out there.
Oh yeah. I could talk for another hour about how off I get about people misquoting John Boyd and stuff and the OODA loop stuff. These people just don't get it. It's so. But yeah, I think broadening horizon and pulling in some of this other information is really critical. And things that might not seem like it would pertain, like decision making to warriors, 100% does. And I think you as a martial artist, that, right? Like, you're an expert enough to go, oh yeah, actually I'm in this flow state, and how I make decisions ahead of time, in my pattern recognition, I can outpace my enemy, and I can put him in certain positions that are disadvantage to him. And ultimately the goal is I'm going to think 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, right? Ultimately, what I'm doing is I'm trapping you without you realizing it in a fight. And that's how I get the kill. Right.
Also, this doesn't only apply to warfare, man. Like, my full-time gig is I work in trading stocks, right? So we find that a lot of the times, like, when a trader really gets hurt is when he's in a trade and he sees a pattern, he takes that trade and it starts going against him. And he's seeing his money down, and he freezes. And he goes, oh shit. Instead of stop loss, I'm out. Like, let me find a new trade. He literally will go, oh my gosh, my money's gone. Maybe it'll turn, maybe my money's gone. And then boom, like, all your money's gone. And that can happen in a matter of 10, 20 minutes, way less even sometimes. Same concept though. It's pattern recognition and it's immediate decision making. I don't know if this is the right decision. I might be leaving money on the table, but let me take the decision. And it's literally like, I always find it funny when I hear you guys talking about this stuff, and no different than, finance, no different than I'm assuming some attorneys could run into. Make the decision. If it's a right or wrong one, who cares? But made the damn decision.
Absolutely. And that's why we developed the EEM specifically, and we know we haven't argued it much yet, but we know this applies to different disciplines. If you're a heart surgeon and something happens, and your center of gravity, your main effort is that heart, whatever surgery incision you got to make or thing you're tying up, whatever that is, if there are other things in the body that are starting to fail, a surgeon is going to go through a rapid decision-making process about what is critical to the life of the patient in order to finish this heart surgery, right? Yeah. So if I have major hemorrhaging somewhere else, I've got to immediately be able to shift, stop the major hemorrhaging, and then get back to the heart if there's an emergency. And so we already know this has application because it's high pressure, time compressed decision making.
Yeah.
This is how we built this model, is in that environment. And so there are cutting across disciplines, there are certain principles that hold true. And I think that's the other aspect of this is, for us, Light Fighter Studies group, the studies part, we are academic. This is one of the things we do is we do generate new knowledge, and we're saying, let's take critical looks at some of the things that we think we have assumptions are. We think we know what this is. Are we sure we're right? And that's how we discovered the EDM, was challenging our own assumptions about what are we trying to achieve versus what we're actually doing. And maybe we're looking at it the wrong way. And then coming up with new, insights of going, oh, wait a minute, this was here the whole time. Anytime somebody discovers something new, that's all it is. They're just going, wait a minute, this was always under this rock, right? You lift it up and go, it was always right here the whole time. Hey guys, that's it. What's in the world is in the world.
General Mattis said once, when it comes to warfare, there's nothing new under the sun.
That's true. And that's why there's principles of war, right? It cuts across all time. If you do these 9 principles and you do them in unison with each other and in concert, you're statistically going to win. And it's the side who, and this is the Western way of thinking, right? The side who does the most correctly wins, reduces your own friction, right? The side who has the more friction loses statistically. And then afterwards in the campaign, like we'll talk about after Russia and Ukraine, right? We'll be able to look back and Monday morning quarterback that and go, oh, here's all these principles they violated on both sides. And here's the side that didn't violate these principles. And how did that play out? It's afterwards we can look at it. But ahead of the time, all we can do is keep those principles in mind, right? And try to see, well, which ones are more critical than the others? Because it's very difficult to do everything all the time, right? That's back to that paralysis by analysis thing. If you've got too many environmental variables, you're going to get overwhelmed. We have this issue with drone operators, commanders and drones right now. You got unlimited data. It's raw, right? It's just coming at you. Commanders will get sucked into it. They won't make decisions because they're waiting. They keep waiting for more data. They keep waiting for the data to reveal the meaning. And we haven't recognized, the Army is having a difficult time coaching these commanders away from these live feeds and saying, look, you have to make a decision. What is most important here? What does this mean to you? And this is why human filters, so chain of command, right? The platoon leader is a filter for his platoon to the company commander. Same thing for company commanders. Well, when you cut them out and, the battalion commander's flying around making decisions for companies and he just cut out all his subordinate leaders, he just cut out all of his meaning-making system. Now he's got to make meaning out of way too much data. So this is another issue that we're focusing on right now in the United States Army is how do we make meaning out of unlimited data? Once the internet came out in the United States, we've mastered data. We have infinite raw data. And people are like, oh my God, the power that gives us. Yeah, our tech, giants are very powerful. They're so powerful, they're in government now, right? They've influenced government to a high degree. And the governments have made an alliance with them going, yeah, what can we use this for? Well, here's the problem. It still doesn't give them any meaning. They still have to interpret all that data, and they're human beings. And many times they're going to interpret it wrong. So as the world gets more complex, I think it discourages a lot of citizen warriors. They're going, what can I, do with my sandals and my rifle in my backyard? How can I fight F-16s and nuclear weapons?
Right.
They're gonna back with too much information. It's already happened, and it's that paralysis by analysis. And so this is what we have to do as go, oh, my advantage is I don't have to get sucked into all that data. I can actually cut out the noise and focus on the signal. So that's why even if it's not martial competencies, go read a book. Get learned. There's no other way to say it. Go learn from somebody that's smarter than you, which is what I did. The last 15 years of my professional career, I have learned from way smarter people than me. So that's what I would say.
What's that classic saying? If you're the smartest man in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Find other people who are smarter than you.
Yeah.
And crosstalk. Sometimes it's good to talk to peers too. Like what we're doing tonight, man. This is I really enjoy this, and I feel like I get something out of it as well, right? Like we're talking. I'm able to learn from you. You're able to learn from me. And I think that's the other aspect too is, finding a peer group and saying, oh, who's on my level right now and how can I interact with them and mutually benefit each other.
Yes.
I think that's back to building community, right? That's what we're doing. We're building community. So yeah, guys have to build community. That's if there's one activity, and I hate this, I'm a male. I'm not very social, and I'm an infantryman male. So I'm very not social. I'm like, shut up. I just want to shoot guns. I just want to shoot guns. That's all I can think about most of the time. I miss my machine gun. Like I was a machine gunner for a handful of years in the Army before I was a squad leader. I miss that machine gun every day. And I would love nothing more than just to save up a bunch of money and buy just a freaking machine gun and have a crew served weapon again. But I also recognize like that's small potatoes. It's actually small potatoes.
Yeah.
Like what's important is people. What's important is community. It's building networks. And that's what's going to increase your ability to survive in anything. Even if everything tomorrow, Putin leaves Ukraine, nuclear war's off the table, Everything's back to normal. We've got 1980s, 1990s again. Music gets better. It's not shitty anymore. Movies get better. Everything goes back to, just sunshine and rainbows. You will still need people's help.
Yeah.
You will still be a part of a tribe somewhere, So if you don't have a tribe already, you better start making one. That's what I would say.
And guys, don't be afraid to get more involved here with the GFS community, man. As we always say, when you're here, your family, all right? I mean, we always mean that. Like, you guys who are always in the chats and you guys who are always, commenting on the page, part of the GFS family. And it's like Tyler's talking about. Get involved, stay surviving, and that's what it's about. So, bro, good talk tonight, man. And I'm hoping that we can get you back on sooner than later.
Sure. Yeah. Any time. Let me know. I mean, like I said, I've got my niche. Ask me after that. I don't know. Especially, I guess the politics side. Like, I don't know. I mean, I have my opinion, but I don't think
we can always find politicians and bring them on if we want to be lied to. But if we want some straight truth, we'll call you, man.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Well, yeah, Will. Hey, man, it was good to talk to you, and I appreciate you having me on here to converse, man.
The pleasure's all mine. Trust me, man. I'll be in touch and we'll set something up in the not too distant future.
All right, Will. Take care, man.
Cheers.
All right.
Later, guys. All right, guys. You heard it. Let's go and say until next time. Please remember that you are your first and last line of defense, and I will see you all in the next Tactical Podcast.